What's happening? Welcome to the 40th episode of the Slapstream. It's I guess it's a special episode. It's the 40th one and we're getting close to the 50. And my goal was to have 50 episodes. First it was 10 and then I was like maybe I should do 30. Now I'm like maybe I should do 50. And who knows, maybe I'm going to go even to 100. Who knows? I don't know how many interesting bass slappers out there. But I know that my today's guest is a super interesting and super amazing player and a guy that I really respect a lot. He played with so many amazing people. He played with uh, Brian Setzer Orchestra. He played with Tom Waits. He played with Asleep at the Wheel. He played with Robert Gordon. All of you rockabilly fans are going to really appreciate that because he was playing slap bass with Robert Gordon in the 70s and the 80s with Danny Gatton too. So many amazing people on his list. And he's also been basically a right hand to Bob Dylan in Bob Dylan's band for over 30 years. So I have lots of questions like to ask him. We've been actually talking almost every day about like all these interesting things. We talk about opera and Arabic music and then rockabilly and then blues and then this and that. So I'm super excited about this interview. I see that quite a few of you are already here and joined. Hello, Caroline. Hey, happy Slapper Day. You're missing one P this time. And hello, Sasha. And unbelievable guest. Yes, Sasha, you're definitely right. Welcome, all of you. I'm glad to see you all here. Before I start, I would like to remind you to subscribe. Please hit that subscribe button, slap that subscribe button, and slap that like. Leave a comment. Let me know who you would like me to feature next time. And live chat is on the side. And so you can, if you have questions for Tony or me, but especially for Tony, make sure to write it in the live chat. There's also super stickers and super chat available. It's right under the live chat. And if you'd like to support my work, check out all these links in the description of the video. There's a Patreon, which is the main way how you can support the Slapstream. And there's also Venmo and PayPal donations. All right, so we have like a few more comments. Hello, John. Howdy from Texas. Hello from California. And now this one is for Tony. Hello, Tony from Winslow, Cheryl, Donna, Kenneth, and Kevin. And from Julie too. And Team Hugo. Hello. Clumsy OXX, hi from South Africa. So we have people from all over the world. All right. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the 40th guest at a Slapstream, which is Tony Garnier.
Hey, Djordje. Hey, man. Congratulations on 40 shows. That's pretty amazing.
40 slap bass episodes. Can you imagine that?
I didn't know there was that many guys really slapping the bass.
It's interesting. I'm trying to present basically slap bass as the art and then show to all these people how you can incorporate slap style when you play jazz or when you play even classical music, obviously rockabilly and psychobilly, but it's mostly for these other genres that we don't see slap bass that present. And I think that's where slap really shines, when it's something different, something like a texture. We talked about it and we're going to talk about it today. Yeah, but before that, great, I would like to welcome you to Slapsville and ask you how are you? How have you been doing during this crazy year and crazy times that is?
Well, I've played 4 gigs since last March, so I'm on a roll. I've done 3 in the last 2 months, so I have a gig tomorrow night. But I've been doing some home recording. I finally figured out how to send bass parts to people, and I'm actually composing music for a documentary for a Serbian director. and
Oh,
it's
really?
called Invincible Mind, and it's for a guy named Zoran Amar,
Oh, cool.
and it has to do with grappling and MMA, and you know I like to go to boxing gyms, so I don't really watch too much of that, you know, the MMA and that kind of stuff. I'm more into boxing, but I have seen some things like, you know, when it first came around, like the Gracie brothers, you know, the Gracie family from Brazil, and so that was interesting. And now it's a lot of it's brutal, so I don't really watch too much of it. But this film is not about the brutality. It's about people's inner spirit and working hard and achieving goals. So it's really, you know, a pretty cool film. So I'm
Great.
enjoying that, you know, working with MIDI stuff and playing guitars that, and I don't know that much guitar. I know the same amount of guitar that I learned in 7th grade and 8th grade. So I'm kind of using that and little piano stuff.
Cool. But so you're writing whole soundtrack going to be yours?
Pretty
You're writing
much,
all the
yeah.
music?
Yeah,
Awesome.
unless there's some songs from
Licensed.
other, yeah, because there's been some recordings I've played on that, you know, might be nice in some spots, but you know, a few. But mostly I'm writing for the scene, so it's different. It's really you know, a real challenge. So I'm enjoying it a lot. So it's, you know, a
I
great
bet.
opportunity.
That's amazing. We have like a few
Yeah.
more comments, and you know, there's some friends of yours here, some fans. That's great. Kurt Ribak just wrote, "Hey Georgia, I saw Tony Garnier with Robert Gordon at the
Oh
show
my
at the
God.
Berkeley Square that featured Danny Gatton."
Wow. That was such an incredible band. I mean,
Oh
you know, and
man.
I just found a show that's like 3 days before the Berkeley show. There's one on YouTube, and it's from the old Waldorf
Oh,
from that
cool.
same year, and it's Danny, like it's his second gig or third gig, and it's just incredible. I mean, he does something towards the end of that show on like, so he plays all this great stuff all throughout the show. Then the last 10 minutes is insane. I mean, he does something on Red Hot that I think at that point, you know, we'd been doing a couple gigs, and he'd been playing, you know, playing really great. But then towards the end of that show, I looked at him and I just realized he'd been kind of playing it safe, and then he just went all out. I mean, we start Black Slacks, and he does something. Then we do I forget, but the whole rest of the show, I'm like, oh, this guy's great, but he's actually better than I even thought. And I used to see him at the Child Herald in Washington, D.C. when I was in Asleep at the Wheel. So,
Oh yeah.
you know, I'm glad that guy was at that show, because that was a very historic show. Really great one.
That's awesome. So you see, Kurt, you got like a firsthand experience.
Oh
And we
man,
have Kenneth Garnier here from his road. Hello
that's
from
my
Minneapolis.
cousin. Yes, and he's a
See?
bass. He plays bass and composes, and his kids all play. And it's one of his daughters sang at the New York at the Metropolitan Opera last year
Cool.
in Porgy and Bess, and it was because I became an opera fan a few years ago, and now one of my cousin's daughters auditions, shows up, and gets a part, and so
Nice.
we got to see her at the yeah, it was so great.
We
So
talked a little bit about, you know, how both of us love opera, and I think that you told me that you recently started playing a little bit that type of thing, or
I
was
did
I
an
wrong?
opera. I did a Domineo, a Mozart opera,
Uh-huh.
not at the Metropolitan Opera House. I mean, that's like the, you know, kind of like the best orchestra in the world. You know, really, that's like. But I got a lesson from one of the bassists, Jackie Danilo Herman, and her sister Margie are in the bass section, and I had met her through a friend who worked for the opera, and so I said, I'm going to do this opera. Can you just show me a few things? And I brought the music, and she gave me a little bit of some coaching things, which was really great. And the guy who got me in that orchestra is Andy Stein, who was in Commander Cody. And so
Oh, wow.
Andy is just, plays all the Joe Venuti and all that stuff, and baritone sax, everything he did with Cody, but he's an amazing classical player. He was the concert master for this orchestra.
Oh, wow.
I mean, he's just not some, fiddle player that plays swing and plays rock and, plays stuff with Vince Giordano. He's in that band too. Plays, I guess, bass sax and baritone, and fiddle. But Andy also was leading this orchestra that I did this opera with 2 years ago. And it was such a thrill because I had just gotten into opera
Nice.
maybe 2 years before. So I hope I get to do more.
Yeah. Operas are fun. Like my first opera that I played was also Mozart, and it was Bastien and Bastien, which I think is the first opera that Mozart ever written. And I was a kid. I was like
Really?
16 or something, and then I had a blast. It was really cool. And there's something when you're a part of orchestra, and then you get that big sound, produced by acoustic instruments. It's
I really like playing orchestral, but I think I prefer opera because it's there's a story and there's singers, there's songs, there's I enjoy it. I love singing the operas, and to play in it though, the thing that this one I did, you rehearse it all day and then you do it at night. You do all the arias, the overture, but it's a one-day event, and it's so great. But at one point, the first singers were rehearsing, and I'm just trying to, read the music, and it's just so beautiful. And the conductor stopped us and said, "Look, if you can't hear the singer, you're too loud." So, and most people had experience in the orchestra, but this was and I thought something was getting off with the singer. And so you have to, when you go to the opera, everything's acoustic. The singers, there's no microphones anywhere. And so it's just how they design the opera houses, how loud the orchestra is playing, how loud the singer is. There's singers with huge voices. There's singers with not such great voices, but they're beautiful voices anyway. And the orchestra cannot overpower. So there's so many elements going on. To me, it's just one of the most ultimate experiences. And my dad could sing opera. My parents both played. My mom was a teacher who taught music her whole life. But my dad was a construction worker, but he studied opera with a guy at Carnegie Hall when they lived in New York. And so he could actually sing opera. And I just didn't, wasn't into it when he was alive. And it was, I just discovered it just a few years ago. But now I'm so into it. I just love, I'm just starting with the Italian and, operas, and like Carmen, the real famous ones. And I'm making my way through them right now.
That's amazing. When I was a kid, I was really into Wagner and like more German stuff. But I dated a couple opera singers, so I had to see them all. It seems that we have like more and more of your fans, like from your early work. Sasha just wrote, "I first heard your early works with Asleep at the Wheel, and that's a great, amazing sound, Western swing style. I really dig that. And after that, I bought Robert Gordon's LPs, and it blew me away. Top."
That's nice.
So,
wow.
So we're going to be talking about all of that.
Okay. And I don't really do the slap bass so much nowadays. I will do it on some gigs where if I'm playing a bass solo, which isn't that often, but if I'm playing a solo and I run out of stuff to do, and
But
I'll start slapping, you know.
I know it's just part of your vocabulary, but it's not. I know that you're not just a slap bass player, but I think it's very important what you did, especially in the 70s and the 80s, like when there was not that many slap guys, and you were doing it back then. And then in the 90s, you played on Dirty Boogie. And I don't think that many rockabilly fans are even aware that you played most of that record with Brian Setzer Orchestra, and
Yeah.
the sound is amazing. I mean, it's one of the best slap bass sounds that Brian ever had on his records. And I know that Brian's fans usually associate that record with Mark Winchester, but he actually played only one song, only "Jump, Jive, and Wail" on that one.
Well, because he
And
played on the big hit
the big hit, yeah,
record, which I couldn't make that session. I was on tour and I was gonna try and make it, and I just thought, oh, it's too risky. Even with a day off, I could have flown to LA from, I think we're in Oregon, and it's just like, you know, I'm on tour with Bob. You don't just leave and go do some other gig, you know. It's like not cool. It's bad.
I actually had
bad
a
business.
similar kind of situation with Brian when they called me like to fly to do some dates, but I was on a tour with Lemmy at that time, and then I was like, "Yo, what I'm gonna do? I really want to do this, but I can't. It's Lemmy." It's like, but anyway, so
Lemmy would hurt you, right?
Yeah, your sister is here too. Lemmy, of course. Liz, so great to see my big brother. He's an amazing brother.
Thank you. You're an amazing sister. And the only sister we have.
All right. So you have family and fans. So this is going to be an amazing show. All right. So let's start. I want to hear about your early beginnings. How did you become interested in music? I know that you and your brother had a band or something. And then how did you, what was your first instrument? How did you start playing bass and all of that fun stuff that I guess most of the people don't know that well?
Let's see. I don't even remember. We should just skip ahead. No, I was playing clarinet when I was like in 8th grade, and then we both took up guitars at some point, and I switched to the bass because my brother D said, "Hey, why don't you play the bass? We can start a band." So that was like 7th grade. So I started playing electric, and then my mom actually got me on the upright. So at the junior high, I guess she got me called the orchestra conductor, and I auditioned, or he gave me a lesson on the bass, showed me how to hold German bow, so I picked the bow up, and it was hard. I mean, I don't remember how I even learned that in 7th grade, because it's a big instrument for a 7th grader, so I don't know, just through sheer will, I was able to learn anything and even carry it around. And I was able to borrow one. So I brought one home, and right away I was playing on the street with other friends that played. This guy, Mark Croner, did he play guitar? I think he's played guitar, banjo, fiddle. He was the first guy to get me like playing bluegrass and jug band music. So I started playing on the street and playing at the school, I guess. And but I also played in the orchestra in junior high. So there was the orchestra stuff, and then I would go to the high school and play with their stage band, because there was no upright bass players. I mean, everyone wanted to play guitars then, so there was no bass players. But upright was really just super rare. So I was able to play with all kinds of people really early on. So I was really, really lucky. And thanks to my mom for getting me on the upright, because that's been most of my work, really. Or actually, playing electric and upright. So I'm glad she did that with, I think the guy's name was Mr. Mallory, and he was the orchestra conductor. And then in the high school, which is right across the street, the stage man director was Mr. Harry Rouzet. And I think he might have lived in Cuba or something, but this guy was so hip. He just would had all these big band charts, you know, like, you know, all the basic big band stuff. And then I still hadn't really taken a lesson on the bass, but I guess I could play. And he would have me take solos and bring the bass out in front of the band and play solo. I mean, I don't know what I was playing, and then go back and then bring the bass back and continue. So I got to play with some pretty cool stuff in junior high and high school. And that's my story. All right, thanks.
I love your story. And I'm sure that your family want to see all of that. So let me see. Like Sasha has a question. He wrote also, thanks, Mom. You know, for
exactly. Yeah, my mom. Yep.
And he also wrote, is it true that your family was a versatile musical family in early jazz days?
I think it was my grandfather.
I think that's what he's thinking. He's
he was
a New Orleans guy, right?
From New Orleans. Yeah, he supposedly was one of Satchmo's teachers. There was Satchmo got put in jail for shooting a gun off at some point.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Like a New Year's Eve, and he was put in this. It was called the Colored Waifs Home, and apparently my grandfather was a teacher there, and so it's not 100% proven, but my aunt Audrey used to tell me about that he taught. It was kind of almost like a common fact that maybe he taught Satchmo how to read. I don't know what his teaching, how extensive it was, but he also led a brass band called the Camellia Brass Band, which is, Camellia red beans. That's like famous beans in New Orleans. So his brass band was called the Camellia Brass Band.
That's amazing heritage. It's so.
And I think he played violin too. So I think he could, the early Creole musicians they were like kind of trained, they could play the brass band stuff and play in the opera house in New Orleans. So maybe he played the opera. I mean, he might have been the first Garnier. Garnier, they say. He might have been the first Garnier who did opera, besides my cousin Arana, who just sang at the Mets.
That's amazing. So I guess you played a little bit of guitar, switched to bass, and then was it was electric bass first, and then you switched to upright, if I understand
But
correctly.
really, within 6 months, I got on the upright.
Okay. And then really upright has been your main instrument ever since.
Yeah, I mean, most bands that I've played with, it's been both, upright and electric. Like with the Sleep at the Wheel, it was mostly almost all upright. And Robert Gordon, it was almost always upright. With Buster Poindexter, with Bob Dylan, it's been one tour I played all upright. When I started, it was only electric, but then I got the upright in there, worked it into the show, as they say, somehow, because I wanted to play on those acoustic songs, the stuff him and GE were doing, because we would play and then I'd take a break and they'd play just all those amazing folk songs, and I wanted to go out there and play those tunes because, I've been playing them, raised playing them, listening to Bob when, in the 60s. And so eventually it was, we put it in, and it has been there ever since, mostly. But electric bass, I did a lot. When I moved to New York, I did more electric, playing with like Dr. John, and playing all these different blues gigs, playing with Albert Collins, and I'd go play with Solomon Burke. There was a Club Tramps that I played a lot, like kind of almost a house bass player. There's probably a couple guys that were like house musicians. And so I played upright too, though, with Charles Brown. But, people like Otis Rush and Escarita and all these guys played the Tramps. But Asleep at the Wheel was, once I went to Robert Gordon, all that this Western swing stuff was so, you know, applicable to rockabilly because it's swinging, you know, walking bass stuff. And so it wasn't too far removed from what I had been doing. It's just I added the slap. But, and I did a little slapping with Asleep at the Wheel. So, but with Robert, I really did it where, you know, I had like bleeding fingers from playing 3 nights in a row and just slapping like a bunch of songs, you know, and it was so great. And the way Danny and Chris Spedding played and Robert, and it was pretty loud and it was really driving stuff. So you just dig in. The music, the rockabilly music is so incredible that you can't just sit there and go, I mean, you're going, you know, it's like crazy wild stuff, man.
That's the only way to do it, you know, like that.
Well, the way you play it, it's like it's a whole nother, you know, takes on a character of its own. Because I've seen videos of you in front of that band, Tiger Army. Yeah. Where you go out front and you do a whole. I guess you do that, you know. Do you do that with every band?
I mean,
do a whole solo. See, I could never do that.
I feel as a bass player, you know, I'm fulfilling my duty, you know. I feel as a team player, so whatever the gig requires, you know. So I'm fine to be like a showman, but I'm fine to be in the back and then being supportive guy to Solace. So whatever gig asks for, you know, like with the Tiger Army, there's always a couple, you know, slap bass solos during the show. And at the end, we do like longer solos, drummer and me, and then it's a whole thing, whole shebang. We have
That's great.
Yeah, we have a new comment from Tornham. I have seen you perform with Bob Dylan many times and love your bass playing. What is the creative process in the band for coming up with so many different arrangements of Bob's songs?
Well, it's a secret formula we use, and I don't actually know what it is. But like I heard you say that I was kind of Bob's right-hand man, but I'm actually like his, you know, pinky finger or little toe. Or that's probably more that's more appropriate.
And you've been with Bob for over 30 years, right?
Yeah, since '89.
That's '89.
But you know, I wanted to talk about how I first heard slap bass, which was I've been playing with this bluegrass band in Redondo Beach. You know, is where we were living, and I was going to junior high there. So I'm out on the street playing, and this guy, my friend Mark Croner, takes me to a place called the House of the Rising Sun. That was like a folk club in Redondo, and there was a band. So it's the first bluegrass I'm seeing live. I mean, I'm playing bluegrass, but I had never really seen it. So he takes me to see bluegrass. So like, okay, this is what it is, Tony. I'm gonna take you to a show and show you how bluegrass actually sounds with guys who are really good. And it was Byron Berline band with Roger Bush playing bass. And so I never seen anyone slap the bass, and Roger Bush is slapping them, and he was so amazing that I'm looking at him just going, what is that? It was just the most amazing thing to see, you know, as a 13 or 14-year-old kid. So I started figuring it out how to do it. You know, it's like you said, no one was doing it. There was no one to show me how to do it. There was no YouTube to go on and you know, watch. And there was no one to give lessons on slap bass. So I kind of figured it out on my own. I guess I listened to some records, but I don't remember seeing anyone do it even.
That's
So
amazing. It's like, there's something about like seeing slap bass for the first time. It just
yeah,
grabs you. It's all you want to do. It's just everything is it's kind of the coolest sound. It's just like
yeah, it's like, yeah, it
you
changes
just
your
want to be
life
that.
when you see it, it changes your life. You're like, and so then I met him years later when I was in a Slapsville, and I got a lesson from him. And we
Oh,
were
cool.
playing this place, my father's place in Long Island with Country Gazette. I think it was Country Gazette, and the thing I was doing wrong was I was pulling the strings with two fingers, and he
Hmm.
said, just use your index finger to pull it. So that was a big help. So that was maybe just 4 years or 5 years after I had first started slapping, but I had been doing it wrong, and that really helped. So once he showed me, I learned from like, one of the slap masters. Is that what they're called? Slap master? Something like that. Anyway, so I did a little bit of slapping with Asleep at the Wheel. This song, My Baby Thinks She's a Train, was one where I kind of do an intro, and it's a rockabilly song. And I also slapped on Choo 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 Boogie, but you couldn't hear it because they used the big RCA 44, and it doesn't really get the highs. Plus, I had a cheap plywood bass. The bass sounds amazing on the engineer. Lou Bradley got an incredible sound at, we were in Nashville at like Columbia B, and so everything's going to sound well, with the right guy on the controls. Everything's going to sound good, and that record sounded great. The Epic, on the Epic label, the first Asleep at the Wheel record I did, which was their second record, and so Choo Choo Boogie sounds great, but the bass drops out a little bit because I'm slapping, and I was using metal string. That's why I've switched to gut, because not that I'm doing more slapping, but I like the sound of gut, and it doesn't tear up your fingers as much. But you use metal strings, right? How do you
Yeah.
not have like, I mean, with Robert, I was slapping so much with those metal strings, and you get a blister, then you have a callus, but then you get a blister, and all guys who slap know this. You get a blister, and you're still playing. Then it turns to a blood blister, and you're still doing gigs, and then you end up in the hospital. No, you don't end up in the hospital, but I was like in a lot of pain. But what am I going to do? And so I learned to use cloth. It's called cloth tape, 1-inch cloth tape, and you could wrap up, and that is how you get through a gig like that. And do you tape up? Do you use tape?
I hardly ever,
See,
maybe
this is
last
where
time, a long
sorry,
time ago.
this is where it gets interesting for everyone when we start talking about bass strings and tape. So you're going to see people going, okay, that was fun. Let's see. Let's go watch TV.
It's I think that all these advices are kind of essential for future bass players. This interview going to live on YouTube forever, so they can find out what was the way of thinking about all these great bass players, and then discover what works for them the best way. But I usually use the Johnson and Johnson coach tape, and I heard that for the first time from Mark Rubin, I don't know, 20 years ago or something. And then I was doing that whenever I have a problem with it. But I've been touring so much and playing for and slapping all these gigs for, I mean, pretty much from the beginning
I
until the
know.
end. So it's
Yeah.
and I use two fingers and I use steel strings.
Oh, do you
And
use two fingers? Okay, so maybe I should go back to
oh,
that.
I
Look
mean,
at 3 more people just left.
I just don't think. Oh, don't worry about those numbers. There's never accurate, never accurate. It's
Okay.
just. But anyway,
No, I
it's. So what I'm saying. So I there's always some people use like two fingers like these. Some people I use these.
oh,
I use these two fingers, and then
really?
because that helps me. Like for example, when I do double stops, I can
Right.
switch and then play like that or like this if I
Wow.
have to do like a triple stops. So anyway,
You're
so
so much
everybody
more
has its own style.
advanced. You're so much more advanced than what I've ever done. Because I never did it. The slap bass I do is the same slap bass that I learned when I was like 19. I mean, I've practiced. I never really developed it further. I tried, like, when I was in Asleep at the Wheel, Asleep at the Wheel was such a great band. I was playing in a bluegrass band, and we opened for them in Santa Cruz, and I'd heard of them. And we opened, and it was Ramblin' Jack Elliott, and I was in this bluegrass band in Berkeley. I moved up to Berkeley to go to school, and so I'm playing on the street as soon as I get there with different people. I'm playing at this club called the Freight and Salvage, and playing with a lot of,
I love that
playing
place.
some
I
jazz.
love Freight and Salvage. I played. I did a live record that did Freight and Salvage. That's amazing.
You did?
I did, yeah.
Oh, I was at the original Freight and Salvage. It was on San Pablo Avenue originally,
Yeah, they moved it later on, but I
down
was.
towards the freeway.
Yeah, I played at two different Freight and Savages. I know that.
Oh, you did? So you played the original one.
Maybe it's original. I don't know. I played two different ones, but not sure which one. But the
Wait,
live record is from the newer one.
so the newer one is like I was playing bluegrass and East Bay, kind of funk stuff and on electric bass, and going to school at Cal, and I was in the jazz department, and I was in a great group, a combo, and the piano player was a woman named Susan Muscarella, and she started the California Institute of Jazz. She's the president. She was such a great piano player. We had this combo that played this. We went to the finals of this California State Jazz Festival, where like 100 schools competed and 5 made it to the finals. Our combo made it to the finals, and Kim Plainfield was a great drummer. He was a drummer. Anyway, Susan, the California Institute of Jazz is right across from the Freight and Salvage. They're right across from each other. So, it's like such a connection in Berkeley and the Bay Area for me, music, because musically there was so much stuff going on. The Phantoms of the Opry, that was a great bluegrass band with Pat Enright, who's still doing incredible stuff. He was on a lot of Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? He was one of the singers on that. So I saw Asleep at the Wheel, and it was just amazing, like seeing Ray do his like cold hard facts of life Porter Wagner song, and Lucky playing the steel, and Leroy had these great songs, and Floyd Domino playing boogie woogie piano, and Chris O'Connor, incredible singer. So I got to join one of my favorite bands in the Bay Area, and I quit school. I lasted really less than a year, but because of all that street playing, I mean, I literally heard they were looking for a bass player on the street. Someone told me I'm playing the upright, and someone comes up and says, "Hey, Asleep at the Wheel's looking for a bass player." And I thought, I'm not good enough to join that band. But a month later, I did work up the nerve to go audition for them, and I got the gig somehow.
That's great. Like so, Bay Area was definitely special back then. I lived a little bit not a little bit, for 7 years in San Francisco, but that
Yeah.
was already in 2000s, and I loved it over there. I noticed there's
Yeah.
a big
Yeah.
art scene. Um, Oh, okay. So now we
Yes,
have Kurt Ribak like helping us out with a little bit of Afraid and Savage history.
San Pablo.
First,
Yeah.
first Afraid
Oh,
and Savage was on San Pablo, moved to
okay.
Edison, just above San Pablo. Now it's much bigger, has a killer sound system, and is on Edison, but close to the UC campus. So I haven't played the original one, but I did play to
Yeah,
the
San
apparently the
Pablo.
previous.
Thanks, Kurt.
Yeah.
It was funny. There was this guy who played the spoons or bones, whatever you call them. Bill, I think his name was, and I remember him being there. And then when I joined Asleep at the Wheel, they all knew. I mean, Asleep at the Wheel knew all the folk and bluegrass and country
Yeah,
people,
yeah, absolutely.
including that band Clover, that had Huey Lewis in it. And I mean, Clover was a very well known band, and a drummer that my best friend's sister married, Mark Cohen, was in a band called the Mother Pluckers or something. And they were a good country band. And there was another drummer, Evan Zhang, who was from Redondo, and he moved up there, and he ended up playing with Stoney Edwards. And we played some in the Bay Area. He was in a great band in Redondo Beach. He was like he was a star. He was the band. When you're a kid and you see bands playing and they're so amazing that's why you want to play, is you see guys that are kind of just a little older, and it inspires you. And so Evan was in this band called the Royal Teens in Redondo Beach, and him and that other drummer, Mark, they were playing on the Sunset Strip when they were in high school. So they were in, Mark was in this band called the Indescribably Delicious. They were like the bands from Redondo that had made it, to the Sunset Strip anyway, which was as far as, that's as far as you could go.
Yeah. I mean, 20 minutes with no traffic, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. And then they're both in the Bay Area. So I was playing with so many great people in the Bay Area, but I couldn't play in any of the bars. I auditioned for some bands, and I was too young to get it. I was like 18. So look, and Redondo, look at the Redondo people.
You see?
Betty, Ellie.
We have people from all over. I wanted to read one more comment, and then I would like to hear you play a little bit. Nicholas Vale, he wrote, "My respect for Tony. I'm a big fan of him. In his visits to Argentina with Dylan, I was there just to see him. Thanks a lot, Georgia. I've been waiting for this guest for a long time. You did it. I did it."
Wow. That was, when we first played in Argentina, it's pretty heavy, because I played some countries with Bob where it was his first time playing, and people have been waiting for years. And there was all this, like in Eastern Europe when the wall was up, people weren't really playing there. It was almost, I guess, kind of illegal, very difficult to play. I think Bob played there before I joined him. He played in East Berlin, but I had never. I played in Berlin with a guy named Peter Gordon in '88, and me and the percussionist Mustafa, we went into East Berlin, and it was just incredible to just see such a difference. First of all, you walk through the border, and then there's like three of the same car, the same color, and that's it. There's no choice. You're seeing, not much a variety of things to buy, even in the stores. And they had great museums, incredible museums. And we just kind of walked around Berlin, but the wall was up, and to see the wall was, and to be on the east side of the wall and be looking at the west going, well, we could go this way, but we'll get shot. So let's go back to the border crossing. It was really, really amazing. And so Argentina, I think we played there, and they'd had, up to that time, earlier on, they'd had some bad stuff going on with the government. And so it was nice to play those kind of places when they opened up, and people who had been wanting to see Bob for years and years finally got to see him. That was really cool. Play Czechoslovakian places.
I love playing Latin American in general, and especially Argentina. Always fun times. Do you have your uprights close to you?
I do.
Can we hear you play a little bit?
It's broken.
Oh.
No, it's not. No, what do you want me to play?
Whatever you want to play. This show is about you. I want to feature your.
Well, I don't really.
Career.
Okay. Okay. So you know what? I'll do. I'll show you the first slap thing I kind of learned was, just a Roger Bush thing with just a bluegrass slap, where you're just going, you're just going. Dun, 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 but he would do it really fast tempo. The first time I saw him play, he's going. Like that. And that was the first thing I saw him do. And I went, wow, it just blew my mind. So I could do that. I could do that. And then I got a record when I joined the Sleep Wheel. Can you see me? Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I got a record from the guitar player in Commander Cody, Bill Kirchen. Saw me slapping, with the Sleep Wheel, and he said, this thing called "Plucking the Bass," a Cap Calloway song with Milt Hinton, who to me is still the most, the ultimate slap bass upright guy. And it was so Plucking the Bass was this Cap Calloway thing. I mean, Milt really just said so much on this with slap bass. So he did this thing, Plucking the Bass. You got to make sure you're in tune, especially with gut string. So this Plucking the Bass thing, I got close to it, but I never really got it. But he did this thing where he goes. It's really, you got to be in shape. But then he would end it with. And that's close to Plucking the Bass. But that's pretty much and you should do it. You should, why don't you show us how to do Plucking the Bass? Are you there?
I have to practice that. I did transcribe it like 15, 20 years ago. Had to find that.
You did?
I transcribed it, yeah, but I'll work on it one of these days.
Isn't it great?
It's amazing, and then we got actually lots of comments. John Stanzel wrote Milt. Kurt Milt was the man.
He was the man, yes.
John Stanzel, the greatest of all time.
Greatest of all time, yes. Absolutely.
Carolyn clapping.
So this is from Bill Kirchen turned me on to that. And once I heard that, it was like, oh, this really opens up what you can do with the upright, with the slap bass.
It's amazing, actually. Let me. I wanted to ask you this question because I know that you're a jazz player too, and I wanted to ask you this question a little bit later on. But like, since we're talking about Milt Hinton and about jazz slap and all of
Wait a
that,
second.
let's
How
do
late are
that
we
now.
going? How
What do
late
you
are we
say?
going to go? No, I'm just kidding. How late are we going to go? I got to go soon. No, I'm just.
All right,
No, go
as long
ahead.
as you want. So we talked about plucking the bass, which is the song from 1939, and through your career,
1939.
yeah, through your career, you played lots of jazz, and then you still do, and we I know that you studied with some of the greatest, and then we're gonna talk about it as well. One thing that I wonder is what is the reason? I mean, by your opinion, what is the reason why slap kind of stopped existing in jazz world after that song? Pretty much, like that was the same year when Jimmy Blanton joined Duke Ellington, and then Milt Hinton recorded that song, which is the kind of one of the best slap songs ever recorded with Cap Calloway.
Yeah.
But when you read like jazz history books, when they talk about development of jazz bass, they start with Jimmy Blanton. They even don't mention any of the guys from before, like Bill Johnson, Pops Foster, Steve Brown, Chester's artists. None of them. I mean, not hardly ever even Wellman Broad. So it's and then after the 1939 and 40s, 50s, 60s, there's almost no slap recorded in jazz. What do you think is the
Really?
reason
Um, I don't know. I saw a guy slapping recently, a jazz bass player, really good bass player, a guy named Russell Hall. And he was slapping the bass with this piano player, Emmett Cohen. Oh, I've seen him and then I looked up videos of Emmett Hall, and he's from Jamaica. So maybe because I don't know if he grew up there. I don't really know his history, but I've just seen this guy recently, the last couple of years. And he was playing, like a real regular kind of whatever regular is jazz solo. And he ended it with this slap. And I hadn't seen that in anyone do that in jazz. And I don't know why it went out of fashion. I guess when Milt was doing it to the end, as much as he could. And maybe when he did plucking the bass, everyone just gave up and said, okay, it's not going to go any further, which really it hasn't. I mean, I'd seen, I was listening to that song Dinah with Steve Brown, and the Gene Goldcat Orchestra. And Dinah is like, has anyone played any more slap than that? I mean, it's pretty incredible. So
it's amazing. I love
right?
Dinah, and that one is from 1926, I think.
From
It's
26. So that's
yeah.
Steve Brown. That's who influenced Milt Hinton, and also
Oh yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
and what's the other guy? Bill Johnson, right? So Bill
Bill
Johnson.
Johnson was apparently the first guy that played it, and that's there are arguments about it, but definitely the first description that I was able to find in one of the New Orleans libraries is the description of Bill Johnson's style, and it was slap when he played actually in New York when he played in New York. So they were
Oh, a
talking
description
about
of him playing it in New York. Okay, and then I
yes.
read that he did it because a drummer didn't show up or something at a gig, and I mean I don't know if that's true or not, but
Those are all legends and myths,
so
apparently.
there's a dispute. Is it Steve Brown or Bill Johnson who invented
Well,
slap bass?
first recording where you can actually hear slap bass, it would probably be Steve Brown, because I think that Bill Johnson recorded in 28 most of the stuff that he did,
Right.
and but it's I'm pretty sure that it's Steve Brown is the first recording where you can actually hear slap very. I mean, on that level, very, very clear and everything. There are like a couple of recordings. Ed Garland a couple of years before that did something with
I know his name,
Eduardo,
but I don't
maybe?
know if I.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
I
Eduardo. I'm
haven't
not
heard
sure.
it.
So it's so that's but it's not really slap. So I mean
But
it's
no one
arguable.
listens to that. No one listens to that style of music unless you go here in New York. You go hear Vince Giordano or something, and maybe Vince will. I don't know if Vince slaps a bass. He must. I know he's got all these great charts of all those bands from the 20s, and so Steve Brown. No one knows his name. Jazz bass players,
I
right?
know. It's sad.
And this song Dinah, it's like,
It's
and
amazing.
there's a bunch of other songs. So I just read something where Gene Goldkat's band is, and those bands, they're like territory bands. They're such from the 20s when, there was these bands that were Benny Moten, those kind of
Oh yeah.
bands from the Southwest. And they kind of, then Basie became the biggest band out of there. There was, other really big bands, but there was they played at Roseland, Gene Goldkat, and what was the other? There was another, and it was like a battle of the bands. And Gene Goldkat, and it's a really famous band. I can't think of who it is right now. Fletcher Henderson. They battled Fletcher Henderson, and the review said Gene Goldkat won because of Steve Brown's slap bass driving the band. Steve Brown, I mean, that's like, Paul Gonsalves, helping to, almost not salvage, but did this thing at Newport in like, what was it, 56 or something with Duke Ellington that was a big shot in the arm to Ellington's career. Paul Gonsalves, with his however many courses he took on the tenor, right? So Steve Brown was such a driving force in the Gene Goldkat band that they won this battle of the bands. And then I think Steve Brown joined some other band. I forget. He left that band.
He
Was it
joined
Paul
Paul
Whiteman?
Whiteman.
Okay.
Paul Whiteman was actually the guy that took like half of Gene Colgate's orchestra's band members, and then he created.
But Steve Brown was fired from a band or quit a band. Maybe not Paul Whiteman, maybe the next band, because there were charts and it was big band, and some of the guys were complaining. Maybe they were complaining about the slap. I mean, I read something where they said they didn't like the liberties he took with the charts. He could read and all that. He was a great musician, but I think he was so used to being able to play so freely that maybe it was in some society band where they really want to just play the notes. Steve, don't play any of those slap fills.
Don't be a rock star.
I mean, that's why I stopped kind of slapping. I was in a band and I started slapping, and the guy turned and he was going to fine me, and then he did. I owed money. No, I'm just kidding. That never happened. They banned the slap.
I was about to ask you actually, like, did you ever have an experience from band leaders telling you, hey, do not slap that much, or like, this is not appropriate, it's not, stylistic or stuff like that?
Yeah, but like I say, I don't really do it so much anyway. I mean, with Robert, it was definitely
mandatory.
It was, man, you had to do this. I mean, I would, even with bleeding fingers, hey, keep that slap going. I'm like, I fainted once. I saw my blood. No. But the first rockabilly guy I actually played with, and, we have to send our thoughts to his family. Ray Campy, who just died.
Oh, yeah.
He just died 2 days ago. He was the first guy I played rockabilly with in Austin. I did a gig with his drummer, Mike Buck, who was in the Fabulous Thunderbirds. But Mike Buck, I met him in Fort Worth, and, there was all these great Fort Worth and Dallas musicians that everyone moved to Austin around that time. Besides the country scene that I was in, all the blues guys, Jimmy and Stevie and Denny Friedman, everyone started moving to Austin. And Mike Buck was like just a musicologist, drummer. He runs Antone's record store, I think, now. But he had all these. I went to his house. He played me Sid King and his 5 strings. You know that band?
Yeah,
Shake This Shack Tonight. You know, all that. And Homer Clemens and it was the first rockabilly. He goes, you know, he probably asked me if I knew what rockabilly was, and yeah, kind of. But you know, it's not like I grew up listening to Elvis. I grew up listening more to, you know, like the Beatles and stuff. I discovered Elvis later on, and Paul, the Johnny Burnett Trio when I started playing with Robert. But what was I saying?
You were talking how the first gig, the first rockabilly gig that you had was in Austin with Ray Campy.
With Ray Campy, and I know he's kind of known for playing bass, you know, but he sang and played guitar on the gigs I did with him.
Which years were that? When was that?
That was in 70, like 76, I'd say.
Okay, because he started playing upright
75.
bass in the 70s. Ray Campy was not playing upright bass until 70, maybe 5, 6, 7. I don't know. It's
oh well,
I interviewed Ray Campy for the Art of Slap Bass. I don't know, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, and
you did? Oh, I gotta find that.
Yeah, and then he told me that he actually started playing upright bass because Ronnie Weiser from Rolling Rock Records was he bought him a bass, and he told him, you know, if you're gonna be, you know, there's no slap bass players, you need to have an upright. So, and then he bought it for him, and then that's when he became Ray Campy, the bass player.
Yeah, because obviously I couldn't play with him. I mean, he came back to Austin, and I played a few gigs with him, and I just saw a video with him. You know, when I heard he died, I tried to look up some videos, and sure enough, there's a video with him with the Leroy brothers with Mike Buck playing drums, and that's the guy who had me playing with Ray Campy. And so he just died like 2 days ago. So
yeah,
that was sad to hear. But I guess he, you know, had records out in the 50s, right?
Yeah, as a guitar player and singer, yeah.
And then taught schools. He was a school teacher.
Yeah, he was. He also owned
Look at Liz.
lingerie shop in Los Angeles.
All right, Liz. Ray Campy gave me my first Fabulous Thunderbird album.
About that.
Are you kidding? I didn't know that. How did she know Ray Campy? When did you meet Ray Campy, Liz? I didn't
know. And you got another shout out from EZ. Big shout out to my buddy and favorite bassman Tony. Evan
Zang. Yeah, that was the guy we grew up listening to as kids. And my mom, we all loved his band, the Royal Teens. I mean, his band inspired everyone in Redondo Beach at that time to play, because you look at a band like that and go, because it's not like it's the Beatles, right? These are guys that are in your town, and you think, oh, wow, this is so great. It inspires you. So Evan I have known since I was, you know, like 12, 13. There was like 4 guys, and they all sang. They were so good.
How about this comment? I still have the album.
Oh,
after Sleep at the Wheel show, and he probably gave it to her like after the Sleep at the Wheel show at Palomino.
That's so great. He gave her I guess it must have been the first Fabulous Thunderbirds record, which I really like that record. You know.
Oh yeah,
Thunderbirds were. Yeah, and that bass player, who's an electric bass player, Keith Ferguson, was the first guy I listened to Bobby Bland and Muddy Waters and Holland Wolf, guys like that, especially later on with Bob, because with Bob, he's like knows more about music than anyone I've ever met. Knows more, the country blues players and electric blues, and just knows music from the 1800s, all this stuff. Anyway, so I really got into more of that stuff with Bob. But when I had moved to New York, I, was getting to play with all these blues guys, and that elusive shuffle that I always thought, there's something about the shuffle that's very hard. And Keith Ferguson was the guy that I kind of got it from. It was like listening to him on the first Thunderbirds record. He's playing. I forget what song. There's a couple really great shows, and he just plays it so in the pocket, that I just went, oh, okay. And he was a good guy. Here's another talented guy who died really early because of drugs. Like who else? There's a guy in LA, an upright player who was one of the greatest of the new guys, like Scotty LaFaro and Gary Peacock. A guy named Albert Stinson. No one knows who Albert Stinson is. He recorded a little bit with Chico Hamilton, and I think he OD'd when he was like 26 or something. But a guy I used to watch in the Bay Area, John Knight, electric bass, another guy OD'd in 1976. And so it's just sad when, people are get involved with, hard drugs.
It's we as musicians, we see that unfortunately too often. There was for a bit that there was a little conversation about your hats. And Sasha wrote,
I got a bunch of hats.
Sasha wrote, yes, I never seen any pics without hats.
I got a bunch. Yeah.
Is that it's your trademark? And then Gandhi wrote like top shelf hat collection. And Caroline wrote, I just noticed the hats, are they all fedoras?
No, there's a couple of like Hamburgs, and is that what is a fedora is a certain style, right? It's like a Borsalino fedora. Okay, so there's Hamburgs is another one, and a couple. I have a couple straw hats. I don't like to wear light straw hats. They don't look so. I just don't wear them so well. I mean, I had a nice, Panama straw hat, which are made in Ecuador, and a really nice one. But I always felt too, too lit up when I wear. So I like dark straw. I'll wear dark straw hats. I have some nice dark straw for the summer, but I've always worn a hat when I played. I think with the Sleepers Wheel was a cowboy hat, but there was a reason for that, which, we were playing a lot of dance halls with people doing the Texas two-step, and it's, I kind of, my afro wasn't really, didn't really, that I really stood out. No, but I like cowboy hats. When I moved to Austin and we were playing country and we were playing with Willie and all those guys, and Asleep at the Wheel was playing Western swing music. And
it fits the style.
And I never knew the real country stuff. I knew bluegrass and I knew jazz. But when I joined them, I didn't know about those music. I just heard them playing this swing and singing, like there was Hank Williams songs and these shuffles. And that stuff was a mystery because they almost didn't hire me. They said, I auditioned and they said, well, you can play the swing stuff. Okay. But you're not a country bass player. I mean, they knew. It's like if you go play with anyone that knows, their stuff. Like, you know, you go play standards with someone and they go, you don't know, like, you know, or play jazz, you'll stick out right away. So, and I don't know enough jazz where, you know, I don't know like hundreds and hundreds of songs, but you know, I guess I know enough to make it to a lot of gigs. And then if there's charts, it's fine. And I never played a lot of jazz consistently, but I still like playing it. And, you know, I get to play it every once in a while. But
I love playing jazz, and actually, I'm in the middle of a recording a jazz record with actually one of our mutual friends, or like musician friends that you played with, and that I play with. Bernie Dressel, drummer from Brian Setzer Orchestra, and other
it's great.
other orchestra. He's one of my favorite drummers, and we're doing a jazz record, and he's incorporated a little bit of slap there too. But it's really fun. I love his playing.
He's so great. And you know, those Brian, I mean, the reason I got called by Brian, and I don't know if am I jumping ahead here?
No.
Oh, so the Brian thing happened because, well, he knew about me. When I started playing with Robert Gordon, no one was doing rockabilly. And I go to audition. Robert calls me one day. I just moved to New York, and I had, you know, started playing some jazz gigs, and he called me and said he'd been looking for me. He called down to Texas, and he was a rock, you know, he had this deal in RCA, and he needed an upright bass player. So I went and auditioned and could slap the bass, and no one did it. Like he said, this is the end of 78, beginning of 79. And by the way, Robert just had a heart operation too, and he's recovering now. He's going to be fine, but I just wanted to have everyone have Robert in your thoughts and prayers. He's doing good, but it was a pretty big operation, and he's going to be out singing again, I'm sure. But anyway, so I go and audition for Robert, and well, I get the gig. You know, I just play it. He goes, "Let's go play at Max's Kansas City. Let's just go sit in." And I walk into Max's. I've moved to New York because I love George Mraz and Michael Moore and Rufus Reid and all these jazz guys, and I was going up to Mary Lou Williams' apartment to play and learn with her. I was through my mom, a connection that my mom had with Mary Lou Williams. Anyway, so we go play Max's Kansas City, and it's the middle of kind of punk going on, and there's safety pins and leather, and when Robert had spiked hair too then, and Chris fit into, and Bobby Chenard, it was way out of my element. I felt like I stuck out like a sore thumb in the whole punk and Max's scene. You know, I wasn't really listening. Later on, I you know, appreciated with Robert. Actually, we played with the Ramones one time. I didn't know I'd heard of the Ramones, but I saw their show after we played, and I watched them and went, these guys are really good. This is, you know, what's there not to like about this? This is pretty good. And then saw some gigs of the Clash, and I mean, I didn't know a lot about that music, but it was amazing to go to those clubs, you know, in that year, 78, 79 in New York. You know, it was just the middle of it. So it really was culture shock to go from Western swing to like whatever was happening there, which I didn't fit in, and I didn't start, you know, changing anything I did. I just started buying, you know, rockabilly clothes to play with Robert. But he had all the good clothes. Robert had he still has God, just the most incredible stuff in the 50s. Oh man. Whew.
You have a question from Jose Arana. He wrote, was that back when Robert Gordon was with Tough Darts?
No, he had just broken up, or he had just left Tough Darts. I don't know exactly how that band fell apart or what happened, but I don't know, and I'm not sure how Robert got into the rockabilly thing. I heard an interview with him recently where he said that was really his thing, and he kind of tough darts was something that he just did. I think he said it was a period in his life where he was kind of angry or something. But he said rockabilly was just because he was from DC, you know, and
Yeah.
like down there. I mean, I still talked to one of the originators of that era, Dickie Harrell, the drummer,
Oh
you know,
yeah.
with Gene
Wow. Okay.
Vincent, and he's in Norfolk, Virginia, but you know,
Yeah.
kind of in that area, and so Robert grew up with the DC, you know, listening to that stuff there. And Dickie Harrell's like he was 15 when he played on Bebop-A-Lula,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
15, one of the
Crazy.
greatest records of all time, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's active. He's you know, I'm kind of in touch a little bit with him, you know, via Facebook, and
He's so cool.
he's around. Yeah, he's a cool dude.
He's
Um,
so great.
so we also got like some questions for you from Tornham. He wrote, "Really like the Lounge Lizards. Do you still play that type of music?"
I like the Lounge Lizards too. You know, when I uh, I did a tour with them in '81 and '82, and then we did some of those Jim Jarmusch, the soundtracks for Down by Law and Mystery Train. And before I even did I do Mystery Train? Before I did Mystery Train, let's see, I was playing with you know, there was this downtown scene, and it had to do kind of with the knitting factory. So there was this guy Peter Gordon and the Love of Life Orchestra, and you know, Rebo and all those guys were around. So there was jazz and guys who could play jazz, but then there was this other kind of jazz which you didn't really hear at the Vanguard. But Rebo does play the Vanguard now. I think it was still kind of more the older players were still around, and you could still hear like real bebop. Like I could go hear Sonny Stitt and Dexter Gordon, you know, and Hard Bop and whatever else was happening in New York when I moved here. And I was playing jazz, and the Lounge Lizards, I guess they wanted the same thing. They wanted an upright bass player. So John comes over and we play just him. And he goes, "Do you know this Eric Dolphy song, Out to Lunch?" And it's like, yeah, I kind of know it. You know, it's just basically a head, and then you're playing mostly free. And so I could do that. I don't know how I guess from listening to Dave Holland and, you know, going to the lofts, the jazz lofts, and Sam Rivers and that stuff. So I knew about playing free, but the Lounge Lizards had these songs that John and Evan, they wrote these songs, and it was really fun. I liked playing with them. You know, touring Europe, the first time I played Montreux Jazz Festival. We played this festival in Vienna. First time I played Italy, went to Italy, was with them. And John was I always liked hanging out with him. And I still do. He's really great. And now he's a painter. You know, he paints. He doesn't really play anymore. He had some problem with, I think it was Lyme disease that went undiagnosed, and it really was very hard on his body. So, and then he had this guy who was stalking him. John had some really tough times, and is still kind of recovering from all that. But he can paint, and he does these great paintings, and he's got a painting show on HBO. So, and he was a good actor in Down by Law. Him and Roberto Beniti and Tom Waits. I mean, what a trio! You know, it's so great.
You know, I want to ask you about that movie. Actually, you know, John is like such a talented, such an artistic person, and great. Seems like a great guy. I never had a chance
He's
to meet
really
him,
great.
but I admire him. he is
And funny.
like
He's
lounge
so
lizards
funny.
and his paintings.
Yeah.
I mean, that whole scene was like really, really cool, with Jim Jarmusch and everything. And I wanted to ask you about Down by Law. You played that on that soundtrack. How did that happen? That's actually one of my favorite movies and one of my favorite soundtracks. And so I just love it, And then I want to hear how did that happen? How did you get involved with all of that?
Well, because I was in the lounge lizard, so John was doing some soundtrack stuff and acting in the movie and doing the soundtrack. That's pretty good. I mean, so he hired me, and then I guess the whole band and other guys played on that soundtrack, and I think maybe there were some other people and some other songs, but he wrote out some songs, some sketches. I think there was some scenes that were just ad lib. You go and ad lib to the screen, which I've done with some Abel Ferrara stuff too. But I like that kind of stuff. That's what I'm liking doing this movie. Just watching the scene and trying to come up with how the scene feels and what the beat is and what the mood is, and is it going to be some melodic? Is it minor? Is it major? Is it bitonal or atonal? Or is there no time? Is it free? You try certain things, and it's usually a few takes. You usually don't get it in the first take. It might take a while, but Down by Law, there was a few of those. I had never done that, and that was really great. But John wrote most of the music, was like his stuff, and then he did this blues record, Marvin Pontiac.
Mm-hmm.
So he's always was coming up with this stuff. But we played one, it was all his songs and Evan's songs on tour, and we did one standard, and one time we missed a train leaving Montreux and ended up on the streets in Zurich with like no hotels. They were all booked. So we had to spend the night on the street, and I had my bass in the wheel and, and shopping a cart from the train station with our luggage. And we knew one standard in a sentimental mood. Mm-hmm. And so we thought, well, let's just play on the street. People were out at Zurich. It's at night. And so I've been street playing, since I was a kid. So we started playing. A girl walks up and she goes, "Do you guys know In a Sentimental Mood?" It's the one standard we played. So we played it. She gave us, I don't know how much money. It was enough for us all to go eat like really good in Switzerland, right?
Oh, wow. Okay. That's
it
something.
Turned out I was talking to her brother was a bass player in New Orleans, who's a good friend of mine. His name is Ramsey McLean. Do you know him?
I don't.
He was one of the kind of guys who could play avant-garde music. I mean, he played with Sam Rivers and who else? Anyway, he was a jazz and electric bass player and did stuff with Little Queenie and all these, all this Charles Neville. I mean, they all know him, but Ramsey became a lyricist for Harry Connick in the 80s. So he was suddenly just writing lyrics for people. So he gave up playing the bass. But it was so funny. I meet this girl and she goes, "Do you know my brother's a bass player, Ramsey McLean? See, I was reading about him." This is 81 when he was still playing bass. So I talked to Ramsey, let's see, last time I talked to him, what's today, Saturday? So Monday, it'll be 3 months and 3 days. No, I'm just kidding. I talk to him like every couple of weeks.
Gandhi is asking you, didn't you play in Kelamine with Ichi?
This is a joke. This is so funny.
Okay.
This guy's doing my bits here.
I mean, I'm not
That's
sure that,
good.
that people don't know, but we already filmed an interview that was like 3.5 hours, and then
We already did all our bits on
oh,
that
no,
one.
but and and then we decided we're gonna go live, and then it's like, oh, it's gonna make it shorter,
Right,
and
and we
then
were going to be serious and not do any bits. Yeah, sorry.
all right.
Doesn't work that way.
Torn Ham is asking you, did you play gut strings when you played the opera?
Yes. Next question. No, I know. Here's the thing. The guys in the Met Orchestra, Jackie was saying, I think they all play the same string because they want to blend as a section. I've seen operas with 7 basses there. I always told them like this. 7 basses as sounding like, one big section or one bass. So I told Jackie, I said, so I'm bowing on gut strings and it's really hard and but I like the sound. And she said, good luck. No, she didn't. She said that it's just me and one other bass player and it would be a nice blend. And it worked okay, but it is hard. I mean, playing with gut strings, I don't know how guys do it, but like, it's impossible because let me show the bow here. You gotta like I mean they sound good, but you gotta. So she said, this long bow is like, well, that's kind of weak. So you gotta go. You got to change direction. She goes, that's not one bow. That's really an up bow and a down bow. So you're going to have to change or else you're going to be. It's really hard. It's much easier. But, guys like Paul Chambers, I mean, he played gut strings and he played, he played that and he played like. I mean, I don't really bow. I don't do like some guys are really good at jazz bowing, but like Slam Stewart and those guys played gut strings, and classical people do not. I mean, you play classical. Do you ever play classical with gut strings?
I'm not a big fan of gut strings. I do like gut strings for certain styles. If I play like old school jazz, like New Orleans style, or if I have to sound really traditional in a rockabilly way, I'm cool with that. But in general, I definitely prefer steel strings. But since you're talking about gut strings and steel strings and classical and bowing on these, I want to mention Sergei Kusevitsky, who actually was playing gut strings, and then he recorded his concerto on gut strings, and it still sounds good.
But that's all they had. So
yeah, that's all they had.
So it was either you played gut strings or you didn't play back then. And Bottesini, all those guys, Dragonetti, right? What did Dragonetti? I mean, he must have played on the thickest strings ever. And that's what I heard. I read that about Steve Brown, that he played really thick gut strings, so he could do like you do. He played with 2 fingers. He grabbed it with 2 fingers, like the way you do. So and he used heavier gut strings than most people. So he must have had a custom gauge or something, which was why he was able to win that battle of the bands for Gene
Who
Goldcat.
knows what those guys were playing? Um,
But
and it's
I
interesting that.
like. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I like the sound of gut strings for, playing jazz. When the guy from Parastro, Adrian, said, "Well, why don't you play gut strings? You like these orchestra strings, passions, and they're a real bowing string," because I was doing a lot of bowing then. He said, "Why don't you try gut string?" And I said, "I don't like guts. I like them for recording, but I just don't like them live." And then he sent me a set and said, "Put them on." So what I like is this. I mean, I don't know if you can hear it on this thing, but you can hear it on record, so you can hear it live when you start walking the bass, when you start going. You know that. It's a sound that they make.
We actually got like
really,
quite a
really
few
like.
comments about gut strings and your sound. John Stenzel wrote, "A woman I saw said that bowing guts was the hardest, but the richest and most dynamic once you got it."
Oh, really? And I know in the opera orchestra, Jackie's sister Margie, she gives. I think she teaches students that use gut strings for the classical, and so I believe it. I mean, I'm dealing with the gut strings, and I use them live, and I do, bowing with Bob and some people, but some people just don't like. I mean, that's hard. The intonation with steel strings is so much better.
Yeah.
I think I talked to somebody who said they were doing a gig with a singer, and they said, can you use steel strings because they're much more easier to play in tune.
Absolutely. I mean, I always wonder, like, what would those? You mentioned Dragonetti and Bottesini. I've been wondering, like, what would those guys think? And then when they hear nowadays bass players play their concertos on steel strings, they would probably be in shock how good good music they
Yeah.
wrote. I mean, especially Bottesini. Bottesini it's pretty much some of the best stuff that was ever written for upright bass.
Yeah, right.
But
And what about did Ludwig Stryker must have started on gut strings, right?
yeah,
And they
I mean, I'm
all
not
switched
sure.
to
I don't
metal.
know. I mean, I think that steel strings were around since the 50s, I guess, mid 50s or something. I don't know when
Yeah, but I
Stryker
don't
started.
remember. I thought they didn't really come into real prominence till later on in the 60s, like the late 60s. Like, Scotty LaFaro was playing gut strings, right? And there's videos of Gary Peacock with Shorty Rogers, and he's playing gut strings. And Eddie Gomez is playing that video in Sweden or somewhere. There's like a guy's house that Bill Evans is playing. It's really a great video. And Eddie's playing on gut strings. And Eddie's like, playing just
Shredding.
so much bass on those gut strings. And he switched to steel, and so they're easier to play. Steel strings are easier to play, but like the person was saying, that there is such a great sound. I mean, I have a problem playing the bass. No, I have a problem. Like when you're playing, like. So you get these squeaks, you know, and you know sometimes those squeaks you don't get them on steel strings. You know, if you're just off a little, you can get like a squeak that's really so embarrassing.
I think it's harder like to play like a faster bowing stuff with the bow, definitely. And
Yeah.
and intonation is always an issue with steel strings. You can hear it, and then
I'm glad you noticed that.
slap, you know, it's harder like for slap to slap the steel strings. But I always wanted to make that sacrifice because I prefer the intonation, and then steel strings give you that frequency that you can actually have like bigger. You can make them kind of sound like guts if you want it in the studio.
I have the problem because I always have slap by pulling the string. And so when you pull the string and it hits the fingerboard, you lose bottom on a steel string, the ones that I always use. And with a gut string, you still like the Brian Setzer. I mean, those are gut strings. Those are eudoxas. So you don't lose any of the bottom. The bottom comes through and it's slapping through all that big band. I mean, I was listening to that record the other day, and some of those songs, like he's had this chart on Rock This Town and some other songs, Switchblade. I mean, there's some incredible charts there. And Bernie's like, he's just so exact on all those hits. He's so great. And so, but I'm slapping through the whole song, and you can hear every note because it's those, you know, silver on gut strings. They were probably these strings would sound great too, plain gut. But now that I'm using plain gut, I really like them a lot. I just like hearing that, like Leroy Vittinger thing or Paul Chambers sound when you walk, you know, which is what we do.
Yeah. You told me last time when we talked like that you took like lessons from quite a few legends, quite a few amazing jazz players. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
I took all these lessons and none of them helped. It's just, no. I'll tell you, the first real lesson I took with a guy that, well, actually, no, the first teacher I had was a guy named Ron McClure, who is in. I just talked to Ron recently, and he was playing with Charles Lloyd, with the band with Keith Jarrett and Jack DeJohnette. I took lessons from him and Cecil McBee later, who was also in that band. But I moved to the Bay Area, and I had never studied bass. I didn't take one lesson, you know. I took 3. No, I hadn't taken one lesson even. And he showed me the Simandl book. He said, well, play something for me. So I played, and he says, you know, there's these things called positions in a bass, and I'm going to start you on the Simandl book. So I started on the Simandl book, you know, half position, first position, second, third, whatever. I never got into solo bass playing though, because I took some lessons. It's almost like the joke, and then you get a gig. You know, you took 3 lessons, and then the guy's on, you know, right? That's like, it's a classic bass player joke. What'd you learn this week? Oh, you know, the 3rd lesson. Oh, I got a gig. So anyway, I learned from Ron, and I'm not sure how many Simandl lessons I took from him. Anyway, it helps so much to learn how to properly position your fingers on the bass. I didn't know that, you know, I was using all 4 fingers probably, which is what Francois Rabat uses, all 4, right? But I use, or Belay, but you use this, and your little finger. So because the spread is even here and it's even here, and that's how you're taught with Simandl. I didn't know that, so I learned, and it helped, really helped. So then I might have taken a couple of lessons from Stuart Sankey when I moved to Austin. He was there, and he's you know, he was the main authority on mandol. And I happened to move to the town where Stuart Sankey lived, and he did so many books on bass. So I got to take a couple lessons from him. But the guy that really thrilled me to death, because I'm still in awe of him, and he's still probably my all-time favorite, is Ray Brown. And so I got to take a lesson from Ray Brown. And this is another thing my mom did, where she helped put on a gig with the LA4 in Palos Verdes, and somehow got his number and kept calling his office. So he gave me a lesson, and he told me that. He goes, I don't really teach now, but your mom has been so nice, and so I'm going to give you this lesson. So I go up to his office across from the Capitol building on Vine Street. He had an office there, and I get a lesson, and it's like one of those things you use forever. And he was so great. It's just such a great bass player that, like, he really is the guy that every bass player looks up to. Ray. I mean, you know, they all like just see that Ray, probably as much as everyone knows him and looks up, he probably doesn't get enough credit. You know, really. I mean, I think every person, even if they know nothing about music, should know the name Ray Brown. You know, and he was also very smart. He was like the manager at the time, I think he managed Quincy Jones for a while, when Quincy might have been producing Michael Jackson. So he managed Quincy Jones. And I see him at the Blue Note one time. He comes in, it's the Modern Jazz Quartet, and he walks in with a briefcase, and I go, "Hey, Ray, what are you doing here?" He goes, "Well, I'm out here with them. You know, I'm their manager." He was the manager for the Modern Jazz Quartet. So he did some management stuff. He was very smart. And still, I could just watch him, besides all the great solos, walk the bass. Just sit there, and no one could walk the bass like him. And I recorded, you know, a couple of years ago with Diana Krall, and I think Ray might have helped discover her, really encouraged her. And so I played with Diana on this, couple records have come out. And her drummer, and she's amazing, she's so good. And her drummer was Kareem Riggins, who was Ray's last drummer, was with Ray for a couple years. So I start recording, and I hear him I'm listening to him in the headphones, and I just went, okay, that's where the time is. You know, if anyone knew where the time was, that guy, you know, because there can be variances, but like, you know, you want to lock in with the drummer, but in jazz, sometimes it's the bass player, is like Ray was kind of, you know, dictated the time pretty much. I mean, you watched him, you know, everyone, whatever band he was in, whoever he was playing with. Well, I mean, the Oscar Peterson Trio, all three of them were amazing. But I loved that those Oscar videos that are out now from the early 60s, and you see him and Ed Thigpen, and they're just playing 2/4, and then like, okay, we're gonna start walking now. And they're you know, watching Oscar, trying to figure out when to go from 2/4 to 4/4. And they're like, okay, here, you know. And me and Floyd from Asleep at the Wheel would do duo gigs in Austin and try and play some of those Oscar tunes, you know. We loved Oscar. So that lesson from Ray was one that I'll always, you know, always use, always treasure that.
I bet, you know, like whenever I hear him play just regular walking bass, I'm like, you know, this is how it's supposed to sound. This is
Yeah.
it. Doesn't get any better or this or that way. It's just, and it's just amazing. You know, I love.
And then his 2/4 stuff, when he's playing 2/4, you know, the lesson I got was about stuff that it wasn't even like playing bass. It was like more harmony things that Dizzy had showed him, you know. So it was mostly kind of on piano. He was showing me stuff, but
interesting.
It just opened up, you know, what he does. And I took a lesson from Dave Holland once, and it was the same thing. Dave just.
When we were talking about Ray Brown, like the what was he thinking? I mean, I assume probably not. Like you were not talking about slap at all, right? You haven't asked him anything about it.
No, but I did. I showed my slap to Dave Holland.
Oh, really? Oh, cool. How was that?
And he like, that's pretty bad, you know. You know, he goes, yeah, that's cool. He likes it. But Dave I saw Dave me and my brother saw Dave with Miles with Bitches Brew.
Oh, nice.
When we were like 15, when I was 15 at Shelley's Manhole. Wow. And then we saw that band open for the band at the Hollywood Bowl. So I got to see Dave when I was, and he was probably 19, 20 at the time. And I think him and Ray might be the only two bass players who consistently had jazz careers with their own bands, right? Who else, as far as heavy jazz bass players?
McBride, Ron Carter.
And Christian and Ron, yeah. But it's hard. There's not that many. And then also to go do a solo bass concert, which I saw Dave Holland draw 500 people solo bass at the Knitting Factory, and to do solo bass for an hour and a half. I mean, you got to like
much harder than that. Yeah, but
and hold the audience.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that Dave, appreciated slap. I know I seen Ray Brown slapping a little bit, but I don't think that he really enjoyed.
He never did it with. He never did it with. Yeah, he never did it with Oscar, and
oh, definitely not.
But he could do. Oscar, he could do.
My favorite solo of him is probably the one, How High the Moon.
Yeah,
I love that one.
I like that. Yeah, he does. Wait, I think he almost does this. Anyway, something like that, right? Oh man.
Well, you still have your bass. Like, please keep the bass in your hand. I want to ask you like something extra about slap.
Okay.
So what are the with slap bass? There are different ways to name different slap patterns. So I wonder, what is the terminology that you use when playing slap, or if you have to explain it to someone? Are you using that way that people use, like single slap, double slap, triple slap, that type of thing, or some other terminology?
I just, what I think I think of it as whatever song you're playing. Well, I guess if you're soloing, it's different. But if you're playing like bluegrass, it's just, let's see. I just call it, well, that's your basic slap. I think that's the first slap you learn is. Which is like Johnny Cash too. But like, guys have, can do. I mean, it might not fit the song, but if you're playing like when I play with Robert and you do Mystery Train, which is. So that's the basic slap, right?
I know that I love it when you do it. So that's
the first one, and then the second one is
that would be basic slap. You would call it basic, okay?
I would say that's your basic slap, but maybe this is your basic slap when you're walking the bass and going. And then you can put in all that other stuff. But I think I'm more concentrated on keeping good time, so I don't try and get too fancy. You know, I just try and get, you know, a good tone. And then there's the what I call is a triple slap, where you're going. Let me see. Right, that's like a triple slap.
Oh yeah, that last one I would call it triple slap, but the one that you played at the beginning I would call a rumba because it's 3-3-2, not just 3-3-3-3.
Ah, you know what?
But,
Well,
you
you
know,
made a study of this. Okay, so then what's this one? What do you call this one? Because it's kind of, it's almost like 16th notes where you're going. You know, that one that Milt Hinton does.
I call them on quadruple.
That's a quadruple. Okay,
That's how I call it.
It's 16th. Okay,
16th
that's a hard one. But like, I saw this guy. What's his name? It's like, and he does the stuff that what's his name does. Willie Dixon. You know, where you like turn your hand. You're going. This guy Bouchard or Bouchard or something.
Boucher?
Yes.
But there's one more slap that I want you to show me that you were playing last time. For some reason, you're not playing it now, and I want to ask you about it.
Which one?
There was a slap that you played that is that basically. So you will play a quarter.
Hey, wait, I'm missing a button. What?
Quarter.
Which one?
You would pull, and then you would do a triplet, but just hits. Ta ta ta. That's what you were playing last time when we were hanging like this, you and me.
Yeah. That one?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't do that? Okay. That's the Milt Hinton one, I think. Is that it?
I mean, you played it at the beginning.
That one?
All right, so you were playing something like this. I don't really remember completely, but it was so it was not regular quadruple like, but it was like that one.
Yeah.
Not many big people use that.
That one?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. I can't even think of what I would use that for.
What did I say?
I can't think of what I was playing when I did that.
Yeah, I don't remember. But it's interesting, this thing like with slap patterns, the way I always count both slap of the string and the slap of the palm slap or whatever you want to call it. So for me, single slap would be just this.
Right.
Double slap would be with one back. Then I would be a triple slap as a gallop would be this. What you call bluegrass. And then triple slap as a triplet would be.
Right.
Then rumba that we were talking about, or double rumba, and I guess quadruple. those would be kind of the basic ones that I would usually like without being too complex.
Right. But you do like some really really complicated ones
There's
that
like
I've seen you
different
do.
ones, like for like this one, like for them. Stuff like that. When I
You know
combine
what? That gives me an idea. Does anyone want to buy a bass? No, I'm just kidding. That's amazing how you do that.
I like that pattern.
I'm leaving. No, do that again. That's so great.
That one.
That's great. I like that so much. That's so cool. I never developed it that far. And I see guys, they're doing it. So I guess, what you were saying is nobody was really doing the slap when I was, with Robert and Asleep at the Wheel. And then all of a sudden, I guess the, Stray Cats were happening. And that's it. Nobody else was really doing it. And I remember Reverend Horton Heat, his bass player, got a good sound. But that was I don't know how long they've been around. I remember seeing them going, wow, you really hear this slap. My slap, I never really had the pickup. I saw a guy with a pickup on the fingerboard yesterday. What's that guy's name? And I never did that. I never really, because I never tried to go. I always wanted a real acoustic sound, and it never really had much to do with the slap. The slap was always just an extra thing that I did, But you guys, man, you guys really do the slap, like all kinds of complicated things.
Slap is cool. I mean, I like to use it in any music style that I play, like especially odd time signatures, like Balkan stuff, like like Romani and Balkan stuff. It works great, for 7/8, 9/8, 11/8, 13/8, and all that stuff. It's really
the Balkan
cool.
music, yeah, that's incredible stuff. Yeah, I saw a clip of you, playing with a Balkan band. That was really amazing. And I don't understand those rhythms. I have to investigate that music a little further. I just watch it and go, wow. And I know there's some I've seen Greek music where they're like, you sit there and watch. We were at a hotel and playing in Greece one time, and I was watching, there was a wedding band. And I'd try and count the rhythms, and there'd be like 11. I go, okay, it's like 11. This one is like 15. And you could just count it out. It took a while, but it was like a medley. And this woman was showing people how to do the steps. I was watching her, and she really knew how to change steps. But like trying to count it, it's like that joke with the Greek drummer, that one.
Oh,
not that I'm where the guy calls the drummer, says, "Can you do this Greek wedding for me?" And the guy says, "I don't know how to play Greek music." And he goes, "Well, just keep the backbeat on 11 and 15 and you'll be fine." That one.
Wow. Good one. But like when I do master classes and workshops on Balkan grooves or slap, like odd time signatures, I always talk about Mexican food. And since like for example 7/8, you have 3/2/2. And 3 would be also burrito, and then 2 would be tacos. So it will be burrito, taco, taco, burrito, taco, taco, 1 2 3, 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2. Or like if it's 9/8, I would put 1 enchilada instead of 2 tacos. So it will be, standard 9/8 is taca 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 taca. So I will be taco enchilada burrito, taco enchilada burrito, taco enchilada burrito. And then everybody.
Did you come up with that yourself?
Like I developed it. I heard there's like little things that people usually try to explain that. Like in US, I noticed that they use short, long, short, long, short, long. But I never thought that was like precise enough. and I heard someone talking about these tacos, and then I was like, oh, okay, I can incorporate this with this, and then anyway, so that's
That's great.
how yeah, it's a
Well, I like.
cool way, and then people actually do remember it.
I'm gonna when I have to do one of those gigs, I'm gonna call you and have you remind me how to count that stuff because some of it's really. I remember when I first started playing Latin music. It was a guy here named Ned Sublet who produces Cuban bands, but he's from Lubbock. He's like a country guy, and he was part of the downtown music scene. And he's was the first guy to play me Arsenio Rodriguez and all this stuff, which is what Mark Rebo did a record of Arsenio Rodriguez, which I just saw. Tom Waits listed Mark Rebo's Cuban record as one of his top 20 records, but Ned Sublet played me Arsenio Rodriguez and some other stuff. And I playing Latin, even just Latin music, even though it's mostly 4/4, to play it, you're growing up in the States, you're always thinking about the downbeat and where's the downbeat and where's one, basically, like James Brown, the one, right? Latin music, it's not one, it's off the clave. And I didn't understand the clave till after I played with Ned. 6 months later, he'd given me a tape, and I'm on a plane, and I'm listening to a Grand Combo or something, and Arsenio Rodriguez doing the song Linda Cubana, and it's just insane because it sounds like just a beginning, just to figure out where the one is, but you can't think of it that way. You have to think of where the clave is. So it took me a long time to figure out about feeling the clave, and then I started to get it, and then I rehearsed with some Latin bands. But I loved going to see, I remember when Kachow was making a comeback, and I got to see Kachow in Chicago in the late 80s, and I would always go see Oscar de Leon at the Village Gate. They'd have these Monday night jazz soloists with Latin bands, and Oscar de Leon, there's old videos of Oscar de Leon where he's dancing. He's got a baby bass, the Ampeg bass, and he's singing and playing this clave stuff. And it's really, I don't know how he could do that and dance. It's really complicated stuff. So sounds Greek to me. No, it's very, very hard stuff. But the Balkan stuff, my brother knows a little bit about Balkan music. He does a jazz radio show, and he's a musicologist, my older brother D. So he's played with Zydeco bands and
cool.
Creole bands with Balkan. I think I was telling you this, the really big star of Balkan music. Is he an accordion player or clarinetist? Or
I think we were talking about Ferus Mustafa, right?
Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. But I like all kinds. I like Egyptian music. I like Kulthum. I really love.
Yeah, we were talking about Kulthum. I love her too.
Yeah,
it's amazing. It seems it's interesting. Like you're one of the rare people that I can talk about opera, Arabic music, Zydeco music, Balkan music, but also we can talk about rockabilly and and jazz and swing and blues and all kinds of stuff.
And when you play with those guys, I got to actually play with like with Bob Billy Lee Riley sat in once and
that's so cool.
Carl Perkins but I got to do other gigs, with those guys. Well, not Carl Perkins, but with Billy Lee, I played gigs with, and the Paul Burleson, I got to play gigs with him, and I just loved it. But I also loved, once I got into Slapsville and learned country, and really learned, the guy that I really liked was Bob Moore, and I told you this. I said, I think my sound, my most ideal sound would be a cross between Bob Moore and Ray Brown. I think that's just the most perfect sound for me, for the stuff that I do, if I could incorporate those together.
That's quite a sound.
And who's the other guy we talked about? Joe Zinkin, we were talking about, who could really slap. And Joe, I
actually, I
said,
found
man,
out about Joe Zinkin through Bob Moore, because Bob Moore talked about him as the greatest slapper that he knew. But a few days ago, I sent you the have I sent you the MP3 of Bob Moore's slap?
yes, yeah,
How did
I
you like
heard that.
that?
It's great.
It's pretty
It's
cool.
great. But
It's
the
it's
guy,
called
who's the guy? What's his name?
it's
The guy,
called the band leader.
the artist. Yeah,
It's called so the tune is called Scherzo for Slapped Bass, but
right.
the guy is I'll remember it.
It's he's so
Give me a
out.
second.
Then I read about him, and
It's
he's
out.
like,
Yeah, it's out.
he's, yeah. But Joe Zinkin. So I saw Joe Zinkin playing Whisperin' and Four Leaf Clover and all this stuff,
Yeah,
slapping. It's just amazing slap. And
amazing.
then,
So
but I didn't know he was the guy I saw earlier on playing with Tammy Wynette on YouTube doing Your Good Girl's Gonna Go Bad. And he's just playing such a groove, and she's going, I've never seen the inside of a ballroom. And he's back there on the bass going, boom, dong, 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 ba-chicka, dong, ka-dum, bong, dong, 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 ka-chicka. And it's like the thing that him and like Junior Husky and those country guys, the way they played country music, people think country music is just boom, 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 boom. But when you hear those kind of guys, the real masters of upright country bass, the things they do are just so soulful and just so mind blowing and push the song. You know, it's like, you know, the bass, you're backing the song, but you want to help move it along, you know, in certain areas. And when they're doing the lead ups and where to put them and where to just like Bob Moore would play. You know, I always like this song he did. He did this song with George Jones, Hanging On to One. He's like, hanging on to one and hanging around the other. And then he gets to the chorus, he's going, around. And all is hanging on to one and hanging around the other. So he played these great grooves and had great endings. You know, he always had these, and they also those guys also in the shuffles took the Ray Brown thing, the skippity bomb, which some guys way overdo it. Like, you know, you hear it on electric bass. It's not the same as when you're doing a shuffle and you go, or they're going. You know that? Or he go. You know, just these little things that Bob and Lightning Chance and Junior Husky and all those, you know, Henry's just
Junior
like he
Husky
did it.
Junior, Junior Husky Senior,
And
Husky
Roy
Senior.
Husky, yeah,
Yeah,
man, he was
those guys were
great too.
killing it. Great slappers, both of them. Great slappers.
And
Oh,
the feel on just,
yeah, amazing.
you know, their
Scherzo for Slaps
feels.
Bass with Bob Moore was with Tupper Saucy or Tupper Saucy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you look up his thing, Tupper Saucy, who he
Oh
was?
yeah, I read
what he
about him.
did?
But yeah, he was out there.
He's out.
Yeah. And it's interesting that that guy was kind of existing in the country world with, music that it's kind of pretty, experimental,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
to
Oh,
say at least.
absolutely. Yeah.
Um, so what would you say? I mean, we talked about it, but we kind of like touched like all the subjects that I wanted to touch. Like, what would you say besides plucking the bass would be the most essential slap bass recordings by your opinion?
Well, let me see. Well, I guess the stuff from the 20s and stuff. There's some cool slap bass there. Later on, I mean, what is there? There's like when I heard Roger Bush, then I found him on some Flying Burrito Brothers record live, and you could really hear the slap. And then with the Kentucky Colonels, there's some slap. I don't know who else. I mean, even what when I didn't do Jump, Jive, and Wail, and what's his name, Mark did it. The slap he did was like, oh wow, those guys. And that's when I started hearing guys really doing different kinds of slap, because I'm just going gunga duga, and he's going and I never developed it that far. But there's some all kinds of guys now who are slapping that, or if you want to develop that style, just look on your site. How's that for an ad for you? Just look on your slap bass site. That's where you find more about slap bass than
anywhere else.
And there's a Dixieland record with Milt Hinton where he does When the Saints Go Marching In. You know that one?
Oh yeah, I know that. Yeah, I know that one. Okay.
It's got way too much reverb and stuff on it, too much room sound. But he's like, the Milt Hinton solo and When the Saints Go Marching In. It's like, oh man, it's as good as and melodic and slap. It's hard to be melodic and play notes and do all that. And for me, this guy had just written, Milt, the king. I think he kind of was. Maybe that's why slap disappeared, like in 39. It's like after he did Plucking the Bass, no one could do anything after that. Everyone gave up and went home.
Well, I can see that, but it's also, it's why didn't Milt really play it? He was not playing any slap that I'm aware of in the 40s and 50s and 60s. Later on he started playing a little bit more here and there on his solo records, and then with Branford Marsalis, and then that's when he started playing again. But before that, he was not. He was just doing regular.
Does he slap on with Branford on Trio GP and all that stuff? I think Milt, if you would go see him live, he'd probably slap. Maybe, don't you think? If you saw him in the 50s playing,
I doubt.
Really?
I don't think that it was considered cool at all.
It was
I think it was kind of like, oh, this is
too old school. Yeah, that's
like
why it
old man music or something,
Yeah.
Yeah, I doubt that
after they saw Jimmy Blanton and then Oscar Pettiford and Mingus and
Mingus slapped a little bit.
Yeah, Mingus slapped a little bit, and Slam Stewart slapped some. All those older guys.
Stewart was an amazing slapper. Unfortunately, there's no many cuts where he slapped. The ones that I found that were the best ones would be like B19 and Messing Around. So those are the ones where he's going for it. He was excellent slapper, but unfortunately not too many. But even he, who was considered kind of old school, I mean, he's in between old approach and like a more modern approach. He hardly ever slapped.
Yeah,
it's interesting. Yeah, that was always something that it's in the back of my mind. Like, why these people?
I have a
not-
question.
Yep.
I have a question for you, and maybe if somebody could answer this for me. This is about. I have this bass, like the bass I tour with is made by a guy in Australia, Paul Davies. But I just got this bass, and it's a from Lemur Music. So it's a flyway bass, so the neck comes off, and it's great. It sounds. And it's a good slap bass. Anyway, I like this bass for like if you need to get a bass into a little thing. This flyway bass is nice, But like I got gut strings on it, so if I'm taking the neck off this bass, and doing a tour where I have to take the neck off every night, is that going to make the strings come apart? I want to know if anyone has ever done that. Anyway, this is a cool bass, right?
It is. Looks cool.
And it sounds, when Ray Brown would try out a bass, David Gage told me Ray Brown would just do this, and he'd hear how the E string rang. I don't know if it's true, but David said that. And then he'd do this. And just do every open string. And then he'd start playing it. But first the open string. Is anyone here?
Yeah. I'm here.
Okay.
Nobody's leaving, everybody's still here.
Okay.
So I guess we have interesting stories. There was I have like a bunch of base questions, but there was also a question that I skipped that I wanted to ask you.
Well, I'll tell you another guy, a couple other guys I studied with, Michael Moore. He was amazing. He ended up playing the last 10 years or so with Dave Ribak, of Dave Ribak's life. Michael's still alive, but I don't think he's playing. That was let's see. I mean, George Mraz, I got a lesson from. Major Holly, I got a lesson from once.
Oh, that's cool.
And because I loved, I was a Slam Stewart fan, and I saw Major bowing the bass, and he was with Roy Eldridge at a club called Jimmy Ryan's that used to, there used to be so many clubs, even in Midtown, Jimmy Ryan's and Eddie Condon's. So I asked Major for a lesson. So I took a lesson from Major Holly, and he stayed a friend, and he would write me, sent me a couple of postcards. But when I moved to New York, he had me sub for him on a Duke Ellington orchestra rehearsal with Mercer Ellington. And I had just moved to town, and it was so nerve-wracking when, Bucky Pizzarelli walked in, and I'm going,
I can imagine.
Oh, jeez. And then Major came at the end of the rehearsal, but it was like Ellington's music with Ellington's orchestra, and that was pretty cool.
Intense.
Yeah. So I used to go see Major with Hilton Ruiz, just all kinds of people. And he had his best bass was stolen. I mean, when people steal upright basses, I just think, how could Michael Moore's bass got stolen in front of Bradley's? George Mraz's bass got stolen. All these guys who had these basses, that was like their sound. I mean, I knew those three basses when I heard they got stolen from their cars.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It was tough times in New York when well, now it really is. But you got to keep an eye on your bass. Yeah.
we talked about like lots of people that you played with, but you have a question from Sasha again, and he's asking
I was working with
how was it
Buster
working with
Poindexter.
Buster Poindexter? Yeah,
That was a lot of fun, and he was playing at Tramps, and I was working there with like I say, with guys like Charles Brown and Earl King. Guys would come into town, and Tramps was the place that hired a lot of kind of blues guys that no one else would have. So I got to play with a lot of people. So Buster was playing at Tramps, at the old Tramps on 15th Street, and I was playing with a Cajun band called Loup Garou, and I would see Buster play, and they were wearing tuxedos, and they were doing like this jump blues kind of stuff. And so the guitar player, Brian, would play electric bass on a couple of songs, but they had no bass player. So I just asked them to sit in one time. I had my upright, and I sat in with them, and that kind of music. I mean, I'd play that, Sleep at the Wheel. It's like, we played all that Bob Will stuff, but we also played stuff by Wynonie Harris and Roy Brown and, Count Basie. We loved swing and stuff. So Buster was doing that kind of stuff. So I sat in, and they hired me to do a gig at, I think, Columbia University. And they said, we're going to hire you for the gigs, the bigger gigs outside of Tramps. So we played this, really my first real gig at Columbia, and it went really well. And and Buster goes, okay, I vote Garnier's in the band full time. So I only played one gig, and then it's like, okay, it's full time. So Buster I played with for like years, like from 80, whenever it started, just shortly after he was starting, till even when I started playing with Bob, I would still come back and do gigs with Buster. But at some point, it was too many. I was missing too many gigs. I had like 3 different guys subbing on it now. A guy plays with him, a guy from New Zealand who's really a good bass player. So he does do Buster sometimes now, but like doing hot all that, man, it was really fun. It turned into a big show though, from the original just quintet, with Brian and Tony Machine on drums and Joey DeLeo on piano, and then it got big at the bottom line, and we had Susie Tyrell and Charlie Giordano, who are with Springsteen now, and the Uptown Horns, and it got turned into a big thing with 3 backup singers. It was quite a show, but he was fun. I liked it. Yeah,
we have I have to ask you about playing with Bob Dylan and that experience. It's so special. There's not like many people left like that around. And then the first question is from Oliver
and
Baroni.
also there never was many people like him to begin with.
That's true, but I'm
from the
thinking
beginning,
that authentic, that special. It's I mean, especially from that era, it's just amazing. So Oliver Baroni, who was also a guest in one of early Slapstream episodes, he wrote kind of similar question, but he obviously missed the beginning of the show. He wrote, I have a question. So I saw you play with Dylan, and you played a load of songs I know and love, and I hardly recognize them.
but he did recognize them.
So how do you guys go about arranging the Bob songs for the live show?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Special pattern?
No, because there's no rules. There's just really no rules about how to play him. It's like, kind of like how Charlie Parker would not play the same solo. You'd hear him play a solo on a record. You go see Charlie Parker live, you're not going to hear the solo he just recorded. So I think Bob was always like that with his music. You know, there's the song, there's the lyrics, and you play the song and you present the lyrics the way that you feel it at that particular time. A lot of people do that, but some people do like an oldies kind of show, a nostalgia show, and he was kind of, he never did that kind of a thing. You know, some people like hearing songs. A lot of people like hearing songs how they are on the record, but if you got to play songs that way all the time, it's like you don't even want to play them. You know, you might as well just stay home, because it turns into a job. You know, playing the same song. Or I mean, it's like playing on Broadway. There's great Broadway shows, but as an audience member, you just go see it once, so you want to see it as it is. But if you're playing that same show over and over and night after night, it's really hard on guys. It's hard on the cast. It's hard on the crew. But they're great shows, and you do it, and you do the thing because that's how that thing works. But Bob has always played his songs differently, so.
Do you guys rehearse, or
people,
you just follow him at the moment?
Oh, it's all like magic. It's all like fairy dust and stuff. It's always different. There's no formula.
Different. All right.
There's no formula for anything.
Yeah.
Except just make it good, and it's always good. And I played them hundreds of different ways, and they're always great because they're these great songs. You know.
Absolutely, yeah. Is there anything that in particular that you can choose, like from that long experience of 30 years with Bob? Is there anything that you you can share with us?
Yeah, right now, how he's the last gigs we did before the pandemic hit were, I think, the best shows ever. And if you want to see Bob, now is the time to go see him, because it's just, when we start up again, it's just the most incredible band that he has now, and it's so great. I think now is the time to see him. It's just amazing. It's so good, really great. I mean, I've played some really special shows. We played all kinds of really cool gigs. But as far as they consistently tour night after night, we get up there and it's just, oh man, it's so consistent. It's just the best right now. So I thought so. Back there, yeah. So yeah, that Hofner President. I think it's before it was called the President. I love those basses.
How many basses you have?
Let's see. 4.
Okay.
That's it. 4 basses. I have a couple more. But I was using Warwick. I use a Warwick short scale. I mean, single cutaway star bass on tour, and I was using their amps, the Jonas Hellberg stuff. But now I'm using Meyer sound rig, and that really sounds great. But I still mostly play the Warwick and my Paul Davies upright, and we'll bring my Precision out. I have a Fender 6, an old Fender 6 Tic Tac bass I play. Last time we saw you in Santa Barbara, I know, and that was only like the 2nd gig in Santa Barbara, 3rd gig with that band. So by the time we got to the Beacon Theater in New York, it was just incredible. It was so good. And I had talked to people who seen Bob for years, and people who've worked with him and fans who've seen him, and they'd tell me after that last tour that ended at the Beacon. Well, I think it ended in DC, but that ended before the pandemic, before we recorded this record. People thought it absolutely was the best shows that they'd seen. And I agree. I think, when we go out again, it's going to be the same, the same thing, but different as always, but just the best, really the best, Bob gigs that I've been involved with. I never
That's amazing.
saw.
That's
Yeah.
I would love to see you, play with Bob. I mean, with anyone, but especially with Bob. That will be a treat. Um, you mentioned your electric bass players, but I want to know about the uprights. How many uprights do you own?
Oh, uprights. I just have three. I have this nice one, which is, I'll actually give you a better. This is a Jockey, so it's a French bass from like, I don't know, 1850 or something. So this is like, but it's big. It's like, it's so hard to like, not that I do that. Whenever I play up high like this, I get a nosebleed, so I stay away from that. But it's got nice. This has such a nice deep sound, and that it's fun to play. When you have a really fun upright to play, where the sound is just coming out. I mean, there's nothing like it. That's my best bass, and the one I have on tour, the Paul Davies one, is nice, and this Lemur flyway bass. So I have three uprights. Was that what
is the
question
third one?
The Lemur flyway bass that I just got.
Oh, okay, okay.
But I'm trying to get this. I'm hoping to one day.
Another one?
Yeah, but I would probably. I don't know. I'm hoping to do something on a really special bass that I'll let you know about. It's not Italian. I'll tell you that, which is, I think the bass players, the Italian basses are the. So I just saw something with Milt Hinton had an Italian bass, and Bob Moore's bass on all those great records is a full-size Italian bass. So something about Italian instruments, that for me is the ultimate. But this bass is great. This French basses are nice. But this is a special one that that's a restoration thing that hopefully we'll be able to do in the next couple of years.
Cool.
So I don't want to say too much about
it. Strings. What are the strings that your
strings.
choice of strings?
Yes, I use strings. Oh no, I like Perastro. The what is it? Carlos and Enriquez, the gut strings.
Okay.
Which I guess they're quarters, right? Is that what they are? And then I also like is anyone still left?
Yeah.
This one. This string.
Cool.
And I've also got these strings from Minnesota, from Duluth. There's some gut strings that are pretty good strings too, American made. But I've been mostly using Perastros.
Perastros on all three of your basses.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, except right now I have these I forget the name of the company from Minnesota.
Okay.
That's on this French bass right now, and they're good gut strings too. I'm still, experimenting, but
sure.
the Adrian Moeller from Parastro, he was the one that said, look, you got this string. He goes, why don't you just put some guts on? And I'm like, oh, okay. So he sent them to me. I put them on this bass, this Djordje bass, and I went to do a jazz gig with this guy, Rob Sheps. I played with, great tenor, a horn player. And so the first song I'm like playing, and I start just walking the bass, and I'm hearing the guts in the room, you know, the gut strings. And I just thought, oh, this is so great. This is like the sound I've been kind of looking for years. And so it worked in a jazz gig. And then I started using them with Bob, and I didn't think they would work. And the sound guy said, no, they sound really good out front. So I used those, and then I used DNR electric bass strings. But the Parastros on the upright have really been nice. And then I used the full circle pickup in the David Gage
my next question.
pickup also. Yeah, and I you know used I used the early David Gage that goes under the foot, and also the Lifeline one, I think it's called. That was.
Do you ever have a problem with feedback like with those pickups?
No, because I use a good EQ, you know, like a parametric, you know, to really, so you can get loud, you know, you got to use a parametric for the, you know, to get rid of the feedback. I mean, I've tried, I think some people will put foam and put tape over the F holes and all that, but it also takes away from the acoustic sound. So I've always tried to, it's a battle to try and get something acoustic sounding loud enough on stage, and right away you're kind of almost defeated because people are using microphones. You know, the guitar amp, that's your sound coming out of an amp. So you put a mic there, so the microphone is picking up the sound that you're hearing, and everything's mic'd. The upright bass and electric basses are all direct sounds, DIs. So you're kind of not hearing the sound. You're not hearing the sound that you're hearing on stage. Hopefully it's better. Usually it's better out front because it's a big PA, and you know, it's probably a much better sound. Now that I have this Meyer rigged on, now I'm kind of hearing almost a PA sound. But you can't just, it's, you know, it's really hard to get the sound with the upright. But I've been trying it for years, and I was using a biamp system and with a big subwoofer, and that would help. And that's kind of what the Myers rig is. But I've always used biamping to really get the upright out there. It's difficult, but after years of experimenting with different things, I think I have my best sound now with the upright. I mean, after how many years, right? Since 1973, I've been trying to get a loud upright to sound natural on a big stage.
Oh, in the 70s were hard. It was hard.
It's really hard. But
yeah, kind of, yeah, almost impossible. Do you have a preference?
But you know what?
For an amp?
I was going to say, the thing with the direct box is that, like, you know, when you record an electric bass, right? Like you use usually that, right? A B15, or I have this Versatone, which is a nice amp. But James Jamerson, the Motown bass that Paul McCartney, you know, and the Beatles were like, how come this bass sounds so great on these records? James Jamerson was, and I only found this out recently, was not putting, they weren't putting a mic on a bass amp. They were using a direct box. So they were getting really clean bass sounds. So you could put a mic on a bass amp, but it's going to cause a problem, and you're not going to get a, you know, bass is a different animal. So, you know, it's got all these low frequencies that are hard to get out front. So DI is the way to go. And I always thought, oh, I'm just you know, it's not my sound. It's not the sound I'm hearing. It's a different sound in the PA. Guess what? If it was good enough for Jameson and those records, then it's got to be good enough for me, you know, until something better, you know, comes along. But I've heard that we get, you know, good bass sounds with Bob. We got a great sound guy, Jason.
Yeah, the good sound is, it's hard to get on an upright. Do you use any other pedals or effects or anything?
Not really. I'll show you my main effect. Here's the only effect I really use. That's it.
I like that one. That's cool.
I have used for upright. Let's see, a Fishman, you know, platinum box, and this headway. You know, you got to use some EQ if you're playing, you know, at clubs. You know, like I use an acoustic image amp or an Epiphany when I'm playing smaller gigs around here. There's, you know, some pretty decent bass amp makers, and you know, you want to get the smallest thing possible, especially if you're carrying an upright, and then you got to carry a big amp too. It's hard. So these acoustic image amps are really nice for jazz gigs, not for a loud, you know, not for a big gig, but for like jazz gigs, boy, they really sound good.
Yeah, it's there's definitely a difference between playing a small show or a stadium show when you have to fight the feedback, have a good sound, you know, have like so you can hear yourself and all of that. When you record, like, do you have any special way to record your upright bass?
Let's see. No, whatever, you know, guys have different ideas. I like, you know, different. I mean, I'm using this for my home recording now. This is a nice mic, 414, I think. But I like M49s are really good. They're not in every studio, but I like that. People use 2 mics, you know. I usually leave it up to like the engineer, you know. And but I'll tell you, my absolute favorite is an M49, and those RCA 44s are good, but you can't find those mics that are really good for bass. You know, they're really well for vocals too. They're really expensive now. All the old mics, you know, M49. If I wanted to get one, I'd have to sell the bass, and then what good with that? With that too. I'd be really in deep.
Carolyn wrote about those
Gamut. Yes, thank you. Gamut strings, Duluth.
See, everybody here knows.
That's
Easy
great.
Evan. Tony is easily one of the most versatile musicians in the business. Plus, he's fun to watch.
Oh, thank you.
And Rodrigo Mantovani. Which bass did you use on Buddy Guy's album Blues Singer? You're playing on that album is so great, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Let's see. I'm not sure what bass it was. It might have been this bass, this Djordje bass, but I can't say for sure. I had another really nice bass for a few years that was another French bass, but I think it was this Djordje bass. Yeah, that was it. And this bass, I think, belonged to Mingus at some point in the 50s. But I think it's the Djordje bass. I'm pretty sure, not 100%. But I always was able to pick basses, you know, that were really even sounding. You know, I don't know if this one has the big boomy E that I might like, but I think you have to be careful for recording if you have too boomy of a bass. You know, you want to have something that's really even. So most guys will let you take a bass home and keep it for a week or so before you have to decide on it. You know, but I don't think you can decide on any instrument till you play it on a gig with an audience, you know, where you're really playing in front of people, because you're like in a different head then. And then you know if a bass is fun to play or if it's just a struggle. And sometimes I had a bass, I didn't know for like about 5 or 6 years, I realized that it was really difficult. I mean, I had this bass for 5 years, and I thought, oh, this is a fun bass. And then one day I'm like, you know, because I don't do a lot of bass solos, but playing a jazz gig and I'm soloing, and I thought, this bass is really stiff. It's so hard to play, and I sold it. So, and I got this bass, and, you know, that was part of the sale, was getting this. And I know that wasn't the bass on the Buddy Guy record for sure. I'm pretty sure it was this Jacquet. But that was fun playing with Buddy. He's talk about one of the last guys. He's one of the last guys who were in all that chess record stuff. You know, he was there. He played with Muddy. You know, he's on that original folk singer record.
It's amazing. It's unbelievable. But you haven't told me that bass belonged to Mingus. I didn't know that.
Did I say that? Oh, no, it was Joe Mingus, not Charles. No, it was, I think it was, yeah. I got it from Colstein, and he said that it was a bass that belonged to Mingus, possibly in the 50s.
Wow.
But it was in the attic, you know, and he knew it was there after Sam, his dad, died, and I'd been dealing with them. I mean, I've mostly always dealt with David. Gage has done most of my work, and I've bought basses from David, but this bass I got from Colstein.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
So we have like here, like you
2
asked me, like,
minutes left, right?
if people are leaving, but check out this. We are still here and loving every minute of this. Winslow, Cheryl, Donna, Kenneth, Kevin, and Julie.
Oh,
and
well, why did I get this text? Stop embarrassing us. From no, I'm just kidding. Oh no, that's from Lucas. Oh God, my son. No, stop it.
And Liz wrote, "Shout out to the cousins." Here's like a little family reunion. Steve wrote, "Hey Liz."
Steve Satterwhite.
He actually had a question for you for any lessons from Major Holly.
Major Holly, yes, I did get a lesson from Major Holly. Not but it was just the one lesson, and it was so great, you know. I mean, he was just such a good guy, and I loved seeing him play. And you know, he did a record, you know, Sleep at the Wheel. The first single that we had was that I recorded with him was Choo 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 Boogie. I found Major Holly at a jazz festival. There's a YouTube video of him doing a whole tribute to Louis Jordan. And they do all these Louis Jordan songs, and he's like the band leader on this. So you might want to check that out. It's like a bunch of, because those guys, Louis Jordan, all those guys who were playing that kind of R&B, they were all jazz players. You know, I mean, Jameson was a jazz player. All these guys, it was like you were either, jazz was like the pop music of the day. So everyone played jazz, or you played classical before, you know, Little Richard and Chuck Berry. But they were all coming out of that Louis Jordan thing too. Everyone was coming out of that same R&B scene. And Chuck Berry even, and I got to play with Chuck at the Lone Star 3 nights. It was so great to play his songs with him. It was just unbelievable. And this whole thing with like Western swing, he got what Maybelline from Ida Red, right? Ida Red, which I don't know if we did it in a sleepy wheel, but all those guys in like Texas and in the Midwest were all listening to each other. You know, there was all that music was so related. You know, the swing, the territory bands, and then that led to like the R&B, and which led to rock and roll. And so Chuck Berry kind of was taking Western swing and R&B and all this stuff, and suddenly he's playing a whole other kind of music. And then Elvis got a hold of it, and it turned into the music that dominated, you know, America and England and all that. After those guys, Jerry Lee, you know, Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Elvis, that became Buddy Holly. That's kind of set the stage for the next till now, really.
Absolutely. I mean, the music changed the world. We have quite a few new fans joining. Michael Fetter wrote, "Loved your stuff with Robert Gordon and Danny Gatton."
Danny
And
was so incredible. Yeah, I love playing with Danny.
Ed Cannon wrote, "Just tuned in. Great seeing Tony. Being a fan since I first heard him with Robert Gordon."
So they should get this show with Danny playing his second gig with Robert, and it's from the old Waldorf. It's on YouTube, and the bass is too loud. Danny should be, I'll just tell you right up front, I'm too loud. But Shannon and Lance Quinn, it was really a great band. But I really never played rock and roll till I played with Robert Gordon when I moved to New York. I mean, I played it as a kid in school, but not like that style, you know, of rock, you know, the beginnings, basic rock and roll. And I really learned from Robert and Chris Spedding. Spedding really taught me a lot. I really learned a lot.
What is the difference in between playing with Danny Gatton and Chris Spedding?
Well, Danny probably played something that I was probably more familiar with. Chris played stuff that I had never heard on guitar. He had just, you know, more of a kind of a modern kind of sound. Danny played like, had a sound that was, he could play modern, he could play grunge, and he could play all that, but his best stuff was like jazz and you know, that rockabilly thing, and he could play with the slide, and he was like a virtuoso, like one of those guys you just watched and just went, wow, and you would play like he'd just spark you. Chris was the guy who like would play very more kind of simple, but like he would play two notes, you know, like it's like the thing with Miles Davis that he appreciated that Ahmad Jamal did, which was the space, leaving the space. And Chris would leave the space and would play less notes, but these solos were so, I mean, that's how I got bloody fingers, you know, just trying to play with Chris. He would just played a driving guitar and these solos that were just a couple notes, you know, that I just learned so much playing with Chris and with Danny, you know, and Robert. It was really a lot of fun, but it was a big difference. I mean, I'm playing the same exact, pretty much same bass things. Chris would have me play different things with his solo songs. But Chris had his ideas about bass, and he, you know, passed them on to me and taught me a lot of things. So I learned a lot with Chris.
That was really a special period. I mean, that band, I mean, it was before the Stray Cats, and it was so important about like with, you know, bringing back rockabilly.
And with Robert, if you want to see like what that band is, there's another thing on YouTube with Robert singing Red Hot, and it says 1980. It says 1980, and I think it's from France. And Robert is doing, he might be doing Red Hot. I think he's doing Red Hot. And I have a beard then, you know, and I don't know if I slap, but I did slap a lot in that. and that's the sound. It's just a trio behind Robert. So it's like, you know, like the Thunderbirds with Jimmy, the way Jimmy plays that guitar and leaves the space and all that. So with Chris, it's like that. With Danny, we had Lance Quinn, who was like incredible rhythm player. So we had Lance who was driving the rhythm. With Chris, it was only a trio. It's always been a trio with Chris. So you're trying to fill in, but then you really don't. You can just kind of, you know, let the space say something. And speaking of like Ahmad Jamal, you know, there's this thing that Ray does where he like plays, you know, with his right hand on the string. And it's so cool. It's just like, I don't know how he did that, but he would play like this. You know, and he'd have his pinky out, right? And it's just like, I don't know why that's so cool, but he got that from when I took the lesson from him. He goes, if you want to hear some cool bass, you know, different bass playing, get all the Ahmad Jamal trio records you can get your hands on and listen to Israel Crosby. And then years later, you know, with YouTube, there's video of Ahmad Jamal with Israel Crosby, and he's got the pinky hang. And I think Ray got it from Israel Crosby, who was recording in the 30s. So, but he'd play like these. He'd play these melodic. He was playing like a whole other song, you know, with Ahmad Jamal on the bass sometimes.
There's special kind of counterpoint going on.
Yeah,
I would say like separate, but it's also supporting the song.
Yeah.
One, you as, I mean, as far as bass players go, you might have the biggest number of like big gigs and big names behind you, and it's hard like nowadays, like for the upcoming bass players to even think in that direction. So I know that times change, but I would like to hear your advice. What are your thoughts? What would be your advice to younger people, upcoming bass players, how to get the gig, how to find a touring band, or like to record? Like our names are always associated with you know, with a singer or a band leader or something. Like how to find that thing that's gonna make a difference.
I don't know. I mean, I always, I don't know. I guess I always liked different kinds of music because of my parents, you know, growing up, you know, like the first concert I ever saw, I think, I don't know if it was the same show, but the first concert I remember was, I think, Harry Belafonte in Minnesota, or the Modern Jazz Quartet, or they were on the same bill. And so, you know, there was all these different kinds of music in the house. And my mom would play church organ, but play, you know, the organ with all those box stuff. And she was an amazing organ player. So there was all kinds of different music. So I always really enjoyed all kinds of different music and played it growing up in high school, you know, played with the stage band and the orchestra and the jug band and bluegrass and a trio with my brother where we were playing Hendrix, you know, and you know, there was all kinds of, and then I'd go play like Fiddler on the Roof, you know, at this El Camino College, you know, so I'm playing Broadway kind of shows. So I guess because there was no bass players for any of these, so that's why I got it. So for bass players, it's like, I think now there's more because of Christian McBride. Thanks, Christian. No, thanks, Jocko and Flea. Now there's a lot of bass players, but there's, you know, every band always needs a bass player. So I always tell people that they'd say, well, you know, you're pretty lucky. You got this gig or got that gig. And I would say, you know, if you're young, and it's a little difficult. In New York, when I moved to New York, you could go to bars, to jazz clubs, and you could get in for free, or it was really cheap. I remember I could go to Sweet Basil and see Phineas Newborn. You could sit at the bar and buy a beer or something for $1.75. Now, then all those jazz clubs, they started charging really steep covers. Pretty much most of them, the ones in the village that I went to. Even Bradley's, I think, at one point started, which was the reason I moved to town, was I would go to Bradley's and see, you know, Michael Moore and George Mraz and Tommy Flanagan and all these guys playing at Bradley's and the Vanguard. And it wasn't so much. Now, well, now they're not open, but when they do open, it a few years ago, after so many years, it became a lot more expensive. So it was hard. But you'd have to go to these places to meet people. You can't just really call people on the phone. So I would always say, yeah, I was lucky, but the only reason you get lucky, you have to be at the right place at the right time, kind of. You know, it's like that. And then you got to be able to really play. But to be at the right place at the right time means you have to be everywhere at once. You know, really. So it's like, it's kind of, you really, that's it. It's like, you got to be here, you got to be there. You're like, what's his name? The Barber of Seville, Figaro. You're kind of being like Figaro. You got to be like everywhere at once. And so that's how you know, have more of a chance of being at the right place at the right time.
I love hearing that advice, you know, especially, you know, when I ask younger musicians, usually the advice is like, be active on YouTube or be active on social media so that people can see you that way. And, you know,
that's probably true now. Don't listen to me.
No. I want to hear like everyone's perspective, you know, because I think that all of these are important, but that human relation, it's something that sticks. You know, if you really click with someone, you can be with Bob Dylan for 30 years.
And you're, well, also you're young, you're kind of fearless. I mean, I'm intimidated talking to anyone at those clubs. No, I'll talk to guys, but back then I would just go up and start talking to
oh yeah, okay.
There was no fear of, you know.
How did you get involved with Dylan?
Because I was doing Saturday Night Live, which came out of playing with T-Bone Woke, who had me sub for him on Saturday Night Live when him and GE started doing Saturday Night Live. I think maybe Steve Ferroni was the drummer that first year I did it. And that was in '86. Just subbing for T-Bone, who played guitar, accordion, drums, piano, everything. Great musician. I said this to somebody that I rode in a car with him one time for like a half hour, and I got out and I felt like I was a better musician just from talking with him, you know, just hanging. But he got me. I called him about getting a different bass other than this Fender. You know, I needed a more modern bass sound. So he said, well, try Spectre bass, you know. So I got a Spectre bass, and that's on Hot, 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 you know. So Timo said, oh, I'm doing Saturday Night Live. You'd be like the perfect guy to sub for me. So that was kind of like just calling a guy and saying, hey, you know what? I'm doing Saturday Night Live. That was like kind of a lucky thing. But now, years later, I look at that as like T-Bone is responsible for most of my career.
That's amazing.
Now when I look at it, yeah. And everyone missed him. He died I don't know, 10 years ago or something. And he was one of the most, loved guys in New York, of this circle of musicians that I know that are playing, singer, songwriter, pop music, R&B, the freelance scene in New York with, the scene that's been going on for years that doesn't really exist anymore. But you would go play with guys like Bo Diddley, or like Chuck Berry, and I remember playing with
Oh, cool.
Isaac Hayes and Ashford and Simpson one time, Mary Wilson and even Otis Blackwell, or just all those people who would use and I guess it kind of, it's like you're in the band that's playing like the Grammys or something. You're just backing up all those people. So, you had to be able to read and, kind of, and know that style. So I was really lucky to play on some of those gigs when those guys were alive, especially a guy like Bo Diddley. You didn't even rehearse. You just went up there and played, and he could put on a show. And Screamin' Jay Hawkins, man, I played with Screamin' Jay. I was just, John Leventhal was just asking me if I had a picture of us playing with Screamin' Jay, because that was another guy that was such a character and so fun to play with. And they're not around anymore. They just don't really exist.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing all these stories. And we filmed one episode. It was 3.5 hours long, and we said like, all right, we're gonna do it like live, and it's gonna be shorter. And now it's 3 hours and 10 minutes.
Oh my God! What happened to my alarm didn't go off. Oh, Jesus.
But I don't want to.
You have to go somewhere.
I don't want to bug you like too much, but I do have one more question for you.
Yeah.
After all these years, after all these people that you played with, after all these gigs and records and awards and everything, what still inspire you to do what you do?
What inspires me? I say my main inspiration is fear, because I can't do anything else. I don't know. I guess just every, I guess I'm at the point where I can play with, you're playing with good people. You don't have to take every single gig. You can kind of pick and choose gigs that are going to be fun. I'm playing with some younger guys, doing some records. There's some great younger jazz people in New York, and I've done a little bit of stuff with some of them, and I'm doing a couple younger folk guys. There's a guy named Robert Leslie I just did a record with, and another guy named Tom Chacon, who's I've done 4 records with, and this band from Ireland, the Lost Brothers, and they did a really cool record last year. And just trying to play different things. But I've never learned as much about music as playing with Bob. Bob's is just an encyclopedia of music, and you're playing the best songs. And so there's some songs I played hundreds of times, and they still they're still incredible to play. It's just nothing. It's like playing with Ellington or Miles or someone like that. They're just so fun to play. They're so great to play, and it's not like you're ever coasting. You're always got to be on your toes, because there's no really set way to play it. It could change the next night. He could change it to something else. So, and you don't have to have a set way of play. You could play it differently. I mean, you have to play the song. You play the song. You play it the way he's singing it. But I like playing different things too, and it's nice playing, having a good instrument to play. That's fun, and I gotta, and I think you can play music for, as long as forever, pretty much until, you're like, I never feel like I would retire. I mean, I know a guy, I was talking to the guy in Nashville, Henry's just like years ago. And he said, well, I'm retired now from playing. It's like, really? And he played on, Blonde on Blonde, and he played at all kinds of country records, and he was on Hee Haw and all this stuff. And he said, well, I'm retired, but because he was doing sessions and they moved to other session players too. But I just thought I would never even think about retiring. Why would I retire? What would I do? I always want to play until I can't hold a bass anymore. Guys, I would see Milt Hinton in his last year. He was playing till pretty much up till maybe the year before he died or something. So, just always looking to play good stuff, and besides I got, Lucas and Tino make me that I have to go out and play too. Two boys. Oh, here's another text from Lucas. Stop embarrassing us. Oh my God.
Thanks so much, Tony. Like we got like lots of cool comments. Everybody really appreciate your stories, and thanks so much for being a part of the Slapstream.
I'm glad I could do it, and I think it's a great thing that you're doing. And I just had no idea till we started talking that there was so many people interested. And like you said, you wouldn't have done this though without the lockdown. So the lockdown has changed everyone. There's no places to play. There's no gigs. But now that we got the vaccines going, so everybody please get your vaccine, because then once we all get our and I just got my second one 2 weeks ago. Once everyone gets vaccinated, we can open up the opera, we can open up Broadway, we can open up the concert halls, we can open up all the gigs again, and everyone can get out to hear music. So please get your vaccines.
We definitely will. Thanks so much, Tony. I can't wait to see you play live. I can't wait to hang with you. And
Same here.
And thanks again, and good luck with everything.
Okay, same to everyone out there. Really enjoyed it. Take care, Djordje. Awesome. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Right. Bye.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
All right. This was the 40th episode of the Slapstream with Djordje, live from Slapsville. And that was Tony Garnier. Amazing. How about that? I love talking to him. This is the second time I've been talking to him like for over 3 hours about bass and all of this. And I think I'm ready to do it again. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. Just slap that subscribe button, like the video, let me know who you would like me to feature next time in the comments below the video. Follow Tony. Tony is on Instagram. His link is in the description. Follow me if you're not following me already. And Art of Slap Bass, the most important. If you like what I do, please check out Patreon. PayPal and Venmo are also appreciated in the description of the video. And what else? Thanks a lot to Ryan Gould for helping with design. That's been amazing. And don't forget, never fret. Slide it in smooth and keep it in the groove. I'm Djordje, and I will see you next Saturday.